So I saw this video pop up on my recommended a while back, and I was shocked, to say the least. The only time the word great should be in an Ahsoka video is when it precedes the word disaster. But a few days ago I see he has another video on Ahsoka out, a little retrospective if you will. And I was thinking, oh thank God, he's finally come back to his senses. He finally sees Ahsoka for the trash it really is. Oh dear God, was I mistaken. He says Star Wars is his bread and butter, but I mean, defending The Last Jedi is not the hill you want to die on, my friend. But I mean, just look at this show ranking. How is Mando only a point away from Andor? And how on earth is Acolyte better than Book of Boba Fett? So I guess looking at Ahsoka, he thought it was like an 8 or a 9 before, and now he thinks it's a 6, so he was wrong both times, basically. But you know, perhaps I'm judging Mr. Goldman a little too harshly. I haven't seen his video yet, so maybe he makes very good arguments to why Ahsoka is the bestest ever, or almost the bestest ever. So I suppose we should just jump right in and find out. Oh, and apologies if my voice sounds like crackly. I'm as sick as a Gonthon on Tharax. I'm just gonna assume that's a creature and planet in Star Wars. It probably is. Sounds like it would be. Anyway, let's just go.
Hello everybody! Today we are revisiting the Ahsoka series 1 year later. Many people loved the first season of Ahsoka, saying it finally felt like Star Wars unlike most Star Wars shows.
Yeah, but like, what did that mean? Because there was Anakin in it, and he had the red lightsaber? And there were clone troopers, and Thrawn? I don't get it. How is it more like Star Wars? There was fan service in the other shows. It wasn't... I don't understand that point. More like Star Wars is like, it's just like useless. Like, I can't do anything with that. It's like, what does more Star Wars mean to you? It's like, I don't know. It's not more lightsabers and action. It's not more of that stuff, that's for sure.
But many others criticized the show for relying too much on fan service to keep viewers entertained.
Well, let's be more specific. It was fan service compensating for a bad script. That's what it was. It wasn't just like because Ahsoka was not entertaining. Let's not kid ourselves here. It was really boring. But the fan service episodes, like the Anakin episode, episode 5, that was only meant to hide the fact that the story was really thin to distract people. That was it. So yes, it was a criticism of fan service, but it was more along the lines of you're using fan service, but you're not using it in a substantive way to make a good story.
After my initial review of the show, I claimed it fell just short of greatness.
How? How could you come away with that conclusion? Even after a first viewing, I don't understand. Almost great. Like, really? Like, if we say the Lord of the Rings trilogy is greatness, let's just use that as an example, you're saying this was like a few fixed flaws away from becoming that. It was a stepping stone away from becoming Lord of the Rings. Like, that's insane. I don't know how you could think that.
So how have my views on the series changed since I made that video?
Well, hopefully they become more correct and, a little less insane. That would be a good start.
So in this video, we're going to break down each episode of the show. We're going to go through each one and see how well they hold up and how well they contributed to the overall narrative.
Well, I'll give you the short answer real quick. Badly and really badly. It did not do well in either of those categories.
At the end of the video, I'm also going to do a rewrite of the entire season.
Oh no, a full rewrite. It's never a good sign of quality, is it?
Then I'll wrap up the video with a brief reflection on the series 1 year later. So, let's begin.
No, man, that was the perfect time to do the meme. You could have done this is where the fun begins, because we're going to be talking about Anakin. And then you could have had B-roll of him slaughtering all the younglings, and yeah, it could have been a really funny intro, but whatever.
So the first episode begins with an opening crawl, one quite different from the Star Wars movies we are used to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's quite different, because it's not, like, good. The other ones were good, that's what makes them different, so I suppose he's correct in a sense. I guess to, like, expand on what I mean is that, the information in this title crawl specifically actually contradicts much of Disney's lore in the other shows, because what they want you to believe is that Thrawn is going to gather all these Imperial remnants to wage a new war against the New Republic. But the problem is that relies on actual smart world building, where the New Republic is in power and has ultimate authority, and the Empire doesn't have any resources, they're disconnected. But in the Disney lore, the New Republic is shown to be like in shambles. They're out of resources. They can't keep control on any planets or bases, and they're really struggling. You got like those two rebel pilot dudes and Mando and stuff that just fly around and are constantly like, oh, we're trying to keep peace, but it's just not, And then the Empire, they're shown to be like really strong. I mean, they got like bases all over. They got one on Mandalore. They got one on that one that they blew up. I can't really remember. Is it Navarro? And they got the Bill Burr one that they go to. So, I mean, they got plenty of bases and resources and ships and Moff Gideon, and they got the council and everything. So, I mean, it's just, it can't work, because what really should be happening is the Empire should be going against the New Republic hard, and the New Republic should be, like, in disarray, trying to figure out, like, what to do because they're not organized enough. That's what should be happening, but they shouldn't even need Thrawn, really. They should be able to do it on their own, but this wants to have the expanded universe story without the actual previous lore that built it up. So that's the big problem with this opening title crawl. It's disingenuous.
Right away, this show has accomplished something that some of the other shows hadn't, and that's direction.
What are you actually smoking, dude? Like, what do you mean direction? The show went, like, almost nowhere. The only thing we accomplished is that we basically switched the position of Ahsoka, Sabine, and Thrawn. That was it. Thrawn's back in one universe, and Ahsoka and Sabine are stuck in the other one. That's literally the only thing that changed. Nothing else happened. It could have been done in like 30 minutes, less than one episode. You could have established or accomplished everything that you did in the entire season of Ahsoka. It was all a waste of time. There was no direction. It was just like it was dead air, basically, to get to the next thing. And I guess Ezra's back in the main universe too, but I mean, like, who gives a shit? I mean, who really wants to see who cares?
The Mandalorian Season 3 was an abhorrent season of television.
Unlike the first two, I guess those were the high art, high class stuff. Not like Mandalorian Season 3. That was the black sheep of the group, if you ask me.
Amongst many issues that the show had, one was the lack of direction.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think the direction is pretty obvious, right? It was get Mando redeemed as quickly as possible, and then push him to the side so Bo-Katan can become the new main character of the show. I mean, that was a pretty clear direction from what I saw, and that's pretty much what the whole season was about. Besides, like, just repeating the plot of the first two with Moff Gideon, that was probably the main goal of the season, if I had to guess.
Here's what I mean by that. After watching the first episode, can you tell me what the plot of this season will be?
Yes, terrible. It'll be awful. It'll be bad. That's what I thought from the first episode of Mando Season 3. I knew it would be terrible because they were doing the same thing that they did in the other seasons, which was waste time and not actually develop character and do things that make no sense at all, like Mando's obsession with having the IG unit that tried to kill him. And Baby Yoda, don't forget. It tried to kill Baby Yoda in the first episode of the first season, and that was in its programming, so I mean, I wouldn't trust it personally with my kid, but I mean, that's just me.
It's really quite simple. After the first season of The Mandalorian Season 1, could you tell me what that season would be about? Absolutely. This bounty hunter was tasked with hunting someone down, and that someone turned out to be a baby of the same species of Yoda. That was an excellent cliffhanger that gave the season momentum.
Well, I mean, it was a stroke of marketing genius, of course. And whoever made that idea that there should be a Baby Yoda should be, like, probably the head of Disney right about now, but I mean, gave the season momentum. I mean, yeah, it kept people engaged, but, like, in the long term, it really hasn't helped that much. putting Mando and Grogu together, we haven't really like deeply explored either of them as characters. It's really hard to do with Baby Yoda, but I mean it's even harder to do with Mando, because we're constantly just like throwing stuff to keep him distracted. It's like, okay, you got to deal with this now. You got to deal with dropping out Baby Yoda, and then when we finally do get him and Baby Yoda separated in season 2, then it's time for him to actually just explore other stuff. They don't have anything for him. They have nothing for him to do because they can't think of anything, which is bizarre, really. There's so much you can do with him, but they do nothing, and so just end up putting him back with Baby Yoda, and we're back to square one. So, yes, in the short term, it was a very good idea, but they couldn't capitalize on it.
With The Mandalorian Season 3, could you tell me what the season was about? Nope. It appears the season at first was about Mando regaining his honor, but that was accomplished at the end of the next episode.
Isn't that just absolutely insane? That the whole idea of going back to Mandalore, a Mandalorian going back to Mandalore for the first time since it was expulsed by the Empire. I mean, that's insane. You could do like a whole season on that, whole 2 seasons on that, really. The idea of all the Mandalorians regaining what it means to be Mandalorian, even though some of them probably don't know because they weren't alive to be on Mandalore. Like Mando would have been really young, and it's just kind of crazy. And of course, that stuff's all broken because of Bo-Katan's history. It's like people should be like knowing stuff that they just seemingly don't know about what happened. They should be talking to each other. There should be different emotions and different things happening, but there's just it's almost like they're a blank slate. It's just like they just don't know anything about their past life, which is it's not good, to say the least.
With Ahsoka, the opening crawl actually does an effective job at setting up the stakes and the plot of the show. The Empire has been defeated, the New Republic reigns.
Yeah, but it's like this isn't Baby's first Star Wars show. We already know that. Like anyone, like, do you really think there's someone who's watching Ahsoka as their like first piece of Star Wars content, even on TV shows, and they're like, I'm not really sure what's going on in the time of Ahsoka right now. I'm not really sure. I wonder, is this Clone Wars Ahsoka? It's like, no, obviously, anyone who's watching Ahsoka is up to date and understands that we're in the New Republic era. So it's just useless. It's all useless.
However, there are attempts to retrieve an exiled Imperial Grand Admiral that could start another war. Our heroes need to stop them. Boom, right away we know what the plot is.
Why is that automatically such a good thing? Like, we know what the plot is right away. It's like, okay, that doesn't say anything about its quality. And like there's plenty of shows where you don't know what the exact goals are of the story right away. Like look at Game of Thrones. I mean, what we had was a bunch of characters that we were learning more about, and you wanted to see where they would go. You knew generally what events would probably take place, but like you didn't know for sure. But I mean, that didn't make it bad. Not knowing is part of the fun. You know, that's what they say. So, and of course, I don't think that's exactly how it goes. It's like Thrawn is this exiled Imperial leader who is going to come back, and our heroes need to stop him. And it's like, well, I mean, I guess he does come back, but I mean, they don't really stop him, so I guess we don't know what the plot's going to be exactly. I guess they fail.
Now, of course, some viewers know who Thrawn is and some don't, but we'll touch on that in a bit.
Well, and now thanks to this retarded show, we know less about Thrawn, really, because we just have so much contradiction to him as a character. I mean, so much of what he does in this show just does not make sense. He's not even Thrawn, basically. If you went and read like Shadows of the if you went to see the original Thrawn, there'd be no resemblance except in like skin color, basically. That's it. He's a pathetic loser. He's an idiot, and it's just it's fake intelligence. It's fake smart man is what we see in Ahsoka. He's not the real Thrawn. It's a skinwalker.
Ahsoka Season 1 was written by Star Wars legend Dave Filoni. Filoni has been involved with the franchise for a long time. He wrote the Clone Wars series along with George Lucas, then he became the sole lead showrunner on the animated series Star Wars Rebels, then once that concluded he directed a few episodes of The Mandalorian, and now he had graduated to becoming a full-on showrunner of his first live-action series.
Yeah, I guess it really goes to show that anyone can succeed in this country, right? It's really inspiring that even someone as talentless and childish as Dave Filoni can become the head of a multi-billion-dollar company's biggest franchise. I mean, truly, I'm amazed. Hats off to you, Dave. I don't know how you did it, but wow. Just wow.
Filoni's strengths when it comes to being a writer in Star Wars are no doubt his abilities to leave lifelong Star Wars fans satisfied.
Fucking speak for yourself, bro. Leave lifelong Star Wars fans. No. I don't. It's just cheap. Ugh.
Some would call this an over-reliance on fan service, others would call it taking advantage of the vast franchise that is Star Wars.
No, it's exactly the opposite. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are intentionally limiting what Star Wars can be on TV. They're not taking, like, you have no idea how much of Star Wars has gone untouched because they're too afraid to use stuff that people won't recognize. So fan service isn't using, like, the scope of Star Wars, it's limiting it. It's the exact opposite.
Regardless of that, however, considering this was his first time writing a live-action Star Wars series, I think it's obvious that he struggles with certain aspects of it.
Okay, first of all, no, it wasn't his first time. He co-wrote on a bunch of you just explained how much he wrote on before. What does live action have to do with the writing of it? I don't understand. And second of all, it struggles with a few aspects as, like, the biggest. It's like, you think? Did you watch it? This is a very, very kind way to put it.
Great writing is like a web. Everything that happens is set up properly, and every little character beat or plot development feels organic and never forced.
That might be one of the stupidest analogies I've ever heard for writing. Good writing is like a web, you know, it's organic, it's natural, it's never forced. It's like, dude, come on. Let's not be pretentious here.
In animation, you can often get away with taking shortcuts here and there. For example, in Star Wars Rebels, like half the episodes involve the main characters entering an Imperial vessel. After the dozenth time of doing this, viewers just stop questioning how the Empire could be so incompetent that they move on.
Wow, fuck off. No, I didn't stop questioning it. I mean, if you're talking about, like, the little, like, 5-year-olds that, you know, the show was probably, like, intended for, it's like, yeah, they probably weren't thinking about the implications of the Empire's competency. They're probably just looking at the pretty colors. But, I mean, just because it's animation doesn't mean you just stop thinking about logic and, like, consistency and reason. It's just like you don't have to shit on the medium like that to make your point. Like, if you're just saying, yeah, Dave Filoni got away with his shit writing because it was animation and not as many people noticed, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe, but that doesn't excuse it.
In the Ahsoka series, the New Republic has a prisoner. The plot demands that this prisoner be released.
You like that? It's like, the plot demands it, so we're just gonna make it happen. You know, despite all logic and reason, you know, the fact that, you know, letting 2 black cloaked figures just onto your ship without any identification and walking up to them with virtually no security when you think they might be Sith is a little stupid. But, you know, we gotta get Morgan released, so, you know, whatever it takes to keep the slop going.
So these two dark Jedi show up and claim that they are Jedi and that they are there to see the prisoner. The New Republic captain has had no word of a Jedi coming to investigate, and he doesn't believe at all that they are Jedi in the first place. So what does he do? You'd think without proper clearance he would simply reject the supposed Jedi.
Well, of course, going into a Star Wars show to think that was probably your first mistake. Yeah, you're probably like, oh, I should probably use some logic here. He probably would do this. It's like, dude, don't do that. You're already doing way too much work. Just sit back and enjoy the ride, man. Just sit back and enjoy the lightsabers. They're cutting down all the guys. Just enjoy it.
However, instead he decides to let them on the ship so he can call their bluff. What does he hope to accomplish? I have no clue. Maybe he wanted to arrest them, but either way it turns out that these Jedi are actually dark Jedi and they kill everyone. This was frankly a very silly way to start the series.
No, episode 1 of Little Einsteins was a very silly way to start the series. This was absolutely catastrophic, because it's like possibly the most like obvious like dumb things that happens, and it kicks off the whole story. Like almost like the whole story changes, or the story just straight up doesn't happen if this commander just makes a totally different decision, not letting them onto the ship, bringing way more security with him down to the hangar, or just blowing them up, just like Phantom Menace. They're just literally doing anything, calling for reinforcements, literally anything else, and the whole story just would have, swayed a different way.
To have the idiocy of one captain lead to the release of a prisoner. Some may call this a nitpick, and that couldn't be further from the truth. You want to know what a nitpick would be? Complaining that Baylan Skoll could just use the Force to free Morgan of these handcuffs. Is that something you can do with the Force? Unlock things? It was done in Return of the Jedi, to be fair, but frankly Morgan being in handcuffs has no impact on the plot.
So he just screwed himself. He said it was a nitpick, and then he countered himself by showing previous examples of the Force being used to unlock handcuffs. Do you know what a nitpick is? An accurate criticism that doesn't have an impact on the story or the plot or the show. It doesn't have an impact that's substantial, like a car being seen in the background of a shot that takes place in like the medieval period. Like, that's a nitpick. It's an accurate criticism, but it's not, for lack of a better phrase, it doesn't really matter. But that's just incorrect. It wouldn't be a nitpick. That would be consistent with the lures of Star Wars. So, swing and a miss on that one.
So using this as a substantial criticism against the show would be silly. On the other hand, having the incompetence of a captain lead to the release of a prisoner, which sets things in motion that will inevitably lead to the start of another war, is absolutely not a nitpick. So little things like this, I think Dave Filoni still struggles with.
You just explained that it has like the biggest implication on the plot and the story, because it's at the beginning and it starts off the whole thing. And then you're like, oh, it's just, he struggles with these little things, these little minor details, he just can't get right. It's like, come on, dude. Just be like, oh, he can't do it. He can't do it at all. Just admit it.
But that doesn't mean the scene was a total failure. This is the first time in live action we have seen Dark Jedi. This is a new concept that can intrigue viewers and leave them wanting to see more.
Oh, well, of course. That's why they're rushing to get Ahsoka Season 2 out. They can't get it out fast enough because viewers were just starving for more of the Dark Jedi. They were just so intrigued by the concept. They can't wait. They can't contain themselves. They want it so badly, right? Come on.
So Morgan is freed, we get a little title card, and then we meet Ahsoka for the first time. Now, depending on who you are, this may or may not be the first time you've seen Ahsoka. For many, it was the Clone Wars, for some it was the second season of The Mandalorian, and for some, it was this moment right here.
Could you imagine seeing Ahsoka for the first time in Mandalorian? Like, you're just a casual Star Wars fan, and you just like The Mandalorian for some reason, and you're just watching it, and you know your characters, and you kind of know some outer context about Star Wars, about Luke Skywalker, and you're safe and you're happy. And then Ahsoka just comes out of nowhere and starts lecturing Mando, and you're like, who are you? I would be in disarray. I would be shocked, to say the least, if I saw Ahsoka for the first time in Mando. But I'm sure that was an experience for a lot of people, so wonder how that was.
Ahsoka has a complicated legacy. She was the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, arguably the most important character in Star Wars. Now, the writers must know that it is very likely a lot of people watching this show had not seen the Clone Wars.
Well, it sure didn't seem like it. And they pretty much didn't explain, like, if you were watching Ahsoka and you hadn't watched the Clone Wars, what would you know about Ahsoka and Anakin's history? Or Ahsoka's history with the rebellion? Because really they just kind of vaguely hinted stuff like that. Like when, in those early episodes, I think it's 1 or 2, when Ahsoka and Hera are talking, and, you know, they're like, you know, Sabine, she needs you. It's just like, she's, you know, she's always been difficult or whatever. And it's just like, you get these vague implications that they had a history, and that would be more for Rebels. But even for stuff with Anakin, in the flashbacks, it's like, okay, I guess Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan, and Anakin, they had a bit of a falling out, you could say, when Anakin turned to the dark side. But, I mean, you don't get anything for, like, what that relationship really was. I mean, Clone Wars was like 7 or 8 seasons of television. There was so much in terms of Ahsoka and Anakin's relationship. Not all of it was good, but there was so much there that should be getting cycled in here that just doesn't. And I'd be surprised if people know anything about Ahsoka and Anakin's relationship after this show. But, like, why would you even want to? They make it so uninteresting and unappealing. So it's a shame all around. I don't think they really accomplish oh yeah, you don't have to watch the other shows to get this one. It's like, well, it wouldn't make sense either way, but it's not standalone.
So how would Filoni handle the introduction of the character to some? Well, he doesn't really handle it at all. Easily my biggest criticism of the show is that if you had not watched the Clone Wars and Rebels, you are most likely going to be very lost. When we get to episode 5, you will see that a big part of her arc this season has to do with her balancing her legacy as Anakin's Padawan.
Well, is it more balancing her legacy, or is it just not going down the same path he did and making the same mistakes? Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't like the way they try to do the Anakin lesson in episode 5. I think it's very vague, and it's more reliant on just Anakin being there than the actual, like, message that he's trying to impart on her, whoever he is. I don't even know if he's a ghost but, you know, whatever, besides the point. But I think that Ahsoka's legacy with Anakin, I mean, how many people in the era of this show even, like, know that she's Anakin's Padawan? Like, her legacy at this point won't be Anakin, because Vader's dead. Most of the Jedi who knew Anakin as Vader, besides Luke, of course, are dead, and he doesn't really blame her for Anakin's fall, which is surprising. That's one of the missed things. It's interesting to think about what Luke understands about Ahsoka's role in Anakin's downfall. But either way, I don't think it's as impactful as one might think it is. And for Ahsoka, definitely not, because we've had so much development of Ahsoka coming to terms with being Anakin's Padawan that at this age, I think it's a little naive to say that she would be this distraught over it still, that she would have come to an understanding of, Anakin, this was your destiny. And wouldn't she know, because of the events that took place, when Luke had told her, yeah, he redeemed himself in the end, it was his destiny in the Force. She was there, not in the world between worlds, but the Force God people, I'm blanking on their name right now, but she understood that Anakin, like, in some way had, like, a very strong connection and meaning in the Force. So I don't think that this is the conflict that would happen. Personally, based on everything we know, I don't think this is what would happen.
something casual viewers of this show will have absolutely zero knowledge of. This idea of pre-required viewing is absolutely something Star Wars has struggled with lately. Movies like those in the MCU could get away with it.
Yeah, like back when they were good, but not so much recently. Even movies struggle with this problem. I mean, you can't tell me that Multiverse of Madness makes as much sense if you had or hadn't watched WandaVision. Or let me rephrase that, more context that would help you in the movie. Because if you just enter Doctor Strange, if you were just a Marvel movie watcher and you went to see Multiverse of Madness and you see like, oh, Wanda's evil now, and she has this Darkhold book, and you're just like, what? She enslaved a town? This is insane. Like, without context, you would just have no idea. It would have been a jump from, oh, isn't it sad that Wanda lost Vision, to, oh my god, she's a mass murderer now. She's an insane witch. She's back to her roots. It's like, yeah, the movies struggle with the problem just as much, and possibly even on a wider scale, because it's basically just 2 hours, and it's a lot more specific, conjoined. At least in Ahsoka, it's a little more spread out. But yeah, trust me, movies do suffer from the same problem, especially Marvel movies.
Why? Because they were movies. Shows, on the other hand, are not afforded that same luxury. When The Mandalorian came out, honestly, you didn't need to know anything else about the franchise to understand what was going on. But to be safe, it was probably best that you at least saw the original trilogy. At this point in the Star Wars franchise, the only thing that should be pre-required viewing for a show are the 9 main films.
No, I disagree, because, I mean, let's just use the goated example. I mean, Andor, I don't think you need to watch any Star Wars movies or shows to get invested in that. Because really, you have an understanding of Cassian and the wider world, the control the Empire has on these planets. You could get all that context without watching the movies. It pretty much establishes it all for you. It's like walking into just a different sci-fi franchise that Star Wars. Basically, it starts from ground up. So it's not necessarily that the Star Wars movies have to be required viewing for these shows. It's just that whatever aspects of Star Wars that you're going to use in your show, be sure, like, if there's any larger context that establishes those, you should probably, even if it's minor, just establish it quickly, reestablish it quickly in some way. There's a slight mention, you can do it without blatant exposition. It's possible, trust me. And we see that in Andor, so yeah, I would just say, just try a little harder, Dave. That's it. You can do it. Well, maybe you can't, but whatever.
You may argue some points, like that with Andor you should have watched Rogue One. I completely disagree.
Oh, yes. Thank God. I'm not crazy. Goldman, you blessed man. Thank you. That is truly life affirming that I could get that insanely correct opinion out of you. Thank you so much. Bless you. Bless you, good sir.
In fact, you're probably better off not having seen Rogue One when watching Andor. This same line of thinking applies to the animated shows. Watching the Clone Wars, as long as you had seen the Star Wars prequels, you are good. Now, what about a show like Star Wars Rebels? Shouldn't you have at least seen the Clone Wars? No. While it certainly helps at times, Rebels is completely a standalone show.
I mean, maybe. I guess so. I mean, I'm gonna be completely honest here. I did not finish Rebels to completion because I really didn't like it. I thought it was really, it was not my cup of tea. I just really didn't like it, and I didn't think it was that good. But I mean, I suppose in a way it's standalone. It incorporates a lot of Star Wars elements and Star Wars characters. But I would say Andor is a better example, just because because Rebel still has reliance on lots of familiar elements and more specifically characters, different places and stuff like that. Whereas Andor, most of what we see is like a completely new side to these familiar aspects, like the Imperial Council, the prison, the vacation planet. All these are new aspects that previous Star Wars knowledge probably wouldn't give you more context for. But for Rebels, there's definitely a lot more of that, especially for Clone Wars and other stuff like that.
Almost no elements of the Clone Wars are introduced in the first season of that show. What Rebels did excellently was develop its characters and its plot as if it was a standalone story in its first season, and then slightly expand from there in the subsequent seasons. Sure, you might be missing out on some of the emotional context of Ahsoka's fight with Vader, but you wouldn't be lost. The Mandalorian was going great for 2 seasons.
Only if you're appealing to popularity, because I mean, okay, I'm gonna try to be lenient with this, because I was not a diehard screw Mandalorian, it sucks when it was coming out, because I didn't see the blatant writing problems as clearly, and it was swept up in the popularity. So I understand not seeing it as clearly, but I mean, come on, you have to, like, looking back, if you did a Mandalorian video in this style, you would find all sorts of problems that are consistent with Ahsoka and Boba Fett and the other bad Star Wars TV shows. You would. They're in there. It's just, it's coded behind, the nice cinematography and, the really good music and stuff like that, but it's virtually the same writing problems, man.
Sure, Season 2 had some pre-existing characters, including Ahsoka, but I would argue that none of that needed pre-required viewing. Then Season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett happened, where in the 5th episode it decided to continue the story of the Mandalorian after Season 2.
Yeah, that's a nice theory. I prefer the one where they just didn't have enough content to fill up a whole season of Boba Fett, so they're like, hey, do we have any footage for Mandalorian Season 3? It's like, yeah, we got a few episodes done. It's like, can we just throw that in? Just throw it in, it'll be fine. We can fill time, and, we can skip all the boring stuff when we actually do Mandalorian Season 3. So, yeah, just throw it in. That's my favorite theory about what happened.
The Book of Boba Fett will now never be a standalone show. It is required that you watch The Mandalorian. And then with The Mandalorian, it is now required that you have seen the Book of Boba Fett if you wish to understand the 3rd season. The reason I bring this all up is because the writers of Ahsoka are treating the show as a show within a cinematic universe. It is absolutely required that you watch Rebels and the Clone Wars. And when this happens, you are turning away a large number of casual viewers.
Well, I mean, it is a show in a cinematic universe. So, I mean, like, when I mentioned that Andor, you don't need to see the previous Star Wars movies to understand Andor. That's not saying that Andor doesn't use elements of the Star Wars universe. It's just saying that it establishes them without the need of having to seen the previous Star Wars movies. There's nothing wrong with Ahsoka using elements of the Star Wars cinematic universe. The problem is that it doesn't implement them in a way where people can understand them. You know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't be like, okay, we're gonna subtly reintroduce who Ahsoka and the Rebels are, because probably a lot of people didn't see Rebels, so we're just gonna implement that into the writing, where it's just like they're I guess I'm using like so much, like, screw me. So, using the conversations that Ahsoka is having with all these people, and bringing up their past history and stuff like that, to reestablish to people, oh, okay, so this is a general idea of who these people are and what their history is, what was happening in their show, what was happening in the wider Star Wars universe, what is happening right now, what are the politics, what are the state of the New Republic. This is all stuff that you can do with good writing. That is what it all comes down to. It's good writing. But that's just not what we get, and that would make or break this point, I think.
No one wants to be told that you can't watch Season 1, Episode 1 of a show because you hadn't watched 11 seasons of Star Wars animation. In the third scene of the first episode of Ahsoka talks to Hera Syndulla, another pre-existing character. Ahsoka tells her that she has a map to find Grand Admiral Thrawn. Because of this, Hera then asks if it's possible to find Ezra. If you had not seen the animated shows, here is what you are asking. 1. Who is Thrawn? The opening crawl told us who Thrawn is, so that's actually not a big deal.
Well, no, it's still a problem, because just saying, Thrawn's a big bad that's going to come back and just wage war on the galaxy, that doesn't actually tell anyone about Thrawn. That's just a statement. We actually don't feel what Thrawn's threat is. We don't know the extent of his intellect or power. And again, this is like from the context of you don't know anything about Thrawn. You haven't seen him before. You'd be like, okay, what's the big deal? Does he have like alien superpowers? Like, what makes him such a big threat to the galaxy that the Imperial Council and Moff Gideon can't fight the New Republic, which is like really shitty in Disney, by the way. But this one alien dude that's in another galaxy right now is gonna solve the problem for him. So, and at the end of this, people are still asking, like, who is Thrawn, really? We didn't get much time to actually, like, establish him as a character, because he was only present in, like, the last, like, third of the season, and we just didn't learn much about him. There wasn't much insight or forethought into who he was, like how he felt about being in this strange galaxy, having to converse with these like weird space witch people to try to get back home. What he did for the like 10 years, is it 30 years? The years that he spent in this other galaxy, the impact that would have on a person, a military mind, like what that would do. Same with Ezra. We barely get anything about how the experience would change them. It seems like it virtually they're the same people they were when they left, basically. So yeah, it's just not really strong, unfortunately.
2. Why is Thrawn missing? What happened to him? Why do people think he was dead when he could be alive? This is something that will never be addressed throughout the entirety of the season. 3. Who is Ezra Bridger? This is something that is exposition dumped on us in the next scene, but more on that in a bit. 4. Why is Ezra lost too? What happened to him and how did he end up with Thrawn? This is also something that will never be answered in this season of the show.
Well, I thought he left with Thrawn, so that's why he was like on. Does he mean like on the same planet? Because the question would be, what happened when they got there? Because they were on the same ship with the space whales and the Star Destroyer. So the question is, how did Ezra and Thrawn separate? Because assumedly they would have landed both being on the ship, because otherwise Ezra probably would have died if he had left the ship before it landed. So you wonder, like, that's like the interesting thing, like, what happened after they got in the new universe. So I mean, it makes sense to me that they would be on the same planet. It's just, it doesn't make sense how they would be separated. And even after years, how Thrawn wouldn't have found him and killed him just out of spite, for ruining his plans, or just kept him as prisoner and tortured him or something. Anything.
The point here is that Ahsoka makes almost no effort to stand alone. Season 1 of Star Wars Rebels made every effort to stand alone. Season 1 of The Mandalorian made every effort to stand alone. Season 1 of Ahsoka makes borderline no effort to stand alone.
I mean, as far as problems go in Ahsoka, this is like in the high 30s on the list. I mean, there's so many more problems that Ahsoka has. It's just insane. I mean, I will admit it is a problem that they don't introduce or reintroduce these aspects that most people don't know about, but it's really not even close to being the core problem.
In this next scene, there is a memorial service to honor the heroes of Lothal. In it, we are told that Ezra Bridger was a hero who sacrificed himself to save Lothal. Okay, cool, but not really. One of the hardest things to do in storytelling is handle exposition, because, contrary to popular belief, no one expunges the entire backstory of someone to someone who already knew that backstory.
Yes, very true. As you know, my good friend, 20 years ago, you fought the samurai, Sanka Toruta, and he killed your family in return. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid, and it is hard to write good exposition, but it's not impossible.
But for the context of this show, Filoni's trying to get the casual viewers on board. So in order to do that, he's just going to tell all the viewers who Ezra was. This is not good writing. Instead of showing us who Ezra was, they are just telling us who Ezra was. Storytelling is not reading off a Wikipedia page. Storytelling is all about emotion and connecting with what is presented on screen.
Well, that's true to a certain extent, but I think the more important part is just like logically connecting pieces of who Ezra was to like our current situation without expositing it directly. Because like I don't even have to be emotionally invested in Ezra's character if I don't know him. I don't have to like feel with him on that emotional level and all the people who lost him. I just have to like understand that. But like when you just like say it like at a desk and they're just like just two dead-eyed people just saying, yeah, I miss Ezra. Or you have the shot of Sabine just like staring at his helmet or whatever, like, oh, I miss Ezra. But like you don't really feel it. Yeah, it's a problem.
Now, is there a solution to this? Is there a way to catch people up on information in other shows without actually having to see in those other shows and not by telling us through some silly exposition dump? Absolutely there is. I suggested this idea back in my review of Ahsoka a year ago, and I completely stand by this idea. Instead of beginning the series with this opening crawl, begin it with the final battle of Star Wars Rebels. Not even the entire battle, just the part where the whales take Ezra and Thrawn away from Lothal.
Well, a couple of problems you run into there. First, you'd have to rewrite both Thrawn and Ezra's introductions later in the show, because those rely solely on you just having not seen them yet in the show. So you'd have to rework those a little bit, try to make them look distinct from their younger selves, a lot older, because Thrawn doesn't look too much different, and Ezra, I mean, he has the beard, but it's really not too much. Maybe, like character-wise, make Ezra like a little more sadder, like rougher because of the environment he has had to go through. You know, make Thrawn like less merciful and stupid, like he was in Rebels. You know, like he's more like, okay, this is what I need to get done. You're a hindrance to me. I'm just gonna kill you, and he does it. I don't know, kill Sabine. Here's to hoping. And then, what's the other problem? I already totally forgot. Wait, let me go back through. Ezra and Thrawn, we were... Oh, right. So, the problem with putting that scene at the beginning is I don't think just showing the end is actually enough context, and actually probably would add more, like, confusion to people who haven't seen Rebels. Because they'd be like, okay, you showed me this is what happened to these people, but I don't understand, like, why that happened, who exactly they are, what was going on. So, I think you'd have to have basically, like, the Kenobi flashback. You know, like, when they showed, like, a quick, like, montage of all the prequels, you'd have to, like, do the same thing for Rebels. Even then, it probably wouldn't make much sense, but that's probably what you'd have to do.
On YouTube, if you look up Ezra Saves Lothal, there's roughly a 2-minute video of Ezra saving Lothal. If this show just adapted that 2-minute video into live action, then so much is accomplished for the casual viewers. For one, we actually see Ezra, Thrawn, and what happened to them. Maybe more importantly than that, however, is showing us the emotional connections our characters have with Ezra.
But wouldn't it be so jarring to see like that like huge emotional connection, and then like when Sabine and Ezra meet again later in the show, they act like two frat guys who haven't seen each other for a semester, and that emotion is just like barely there at all, that would be so jarring to me, really, because then that's us actually seeing the emotion, and then the show just lying to us later, saying that these characters wouldn't be like insanely flustered and because it's been years since they've seen each other, and Sabine, they didn't even know if they were alive. They didn't know if Ezra. She definitely didn't know if Ezra was alive. The chances weren't high, and Ezra had no idea what was happening in the other galaxy. So yeah, they totally fumbled that meetup. That was terrible.
Remember, storytelling is not reading a Wikipedia page. It's about connecting with what's being presented on screen. This Hera woman clearly has an attachment to Ezra. That's cool. But if we show the moment Ezra is about to leave for a decade, and we saw how heartbroken Hera was about this, we are now connecting with the character. When Hera mentions Ezra to Ahsoka, there is now meaning behind this because we saw how much Hera cares about Ezra.
I mean, we see that she cares, but we don't understand why. Like, we see, oh, okay, they must have been friends, and that's emotional, but like, we can invest ourselves in that. We still don't know who Ezra is. We just know who cares about him, if that makes sense. So the emotional investment actually still wouldn't be there, at least not fully, because we'd actually need more context into like who these people were, what their relationship was. We kind of get like hints of it, like Sabine and Ezra might have been love interest, and Hera might have been sort of like a mother figure, but it's not really clear. So yeah, he's on the right track. That would be better, but we'd still need a little more.
This is really important for your story. The other major character introduced in this episode is, of course, Sabine. I actually think this episode does a pretty good job at showing us who Sabine is. She ditches her own ceremony because she's still a rebel.
What? She ditches her own ceremony. You understand that that ceremony was not just for her. That was for the rebels, the people who died to fight the Empire, including Ezra, the one who was like a brother to her. They were celebrating him too, and she just ditches it because she's a rebel. That makes no sense at all. No sense at all. Lame, lame.
She likes to do things on her own, and she's stubborn. All things highlighted nicely in these scenes. The other major part of her character introduction is her relationship with Ezra. She watches a hologram of Ezra, she has dreams about Ezra, and the supposedly strained relationship with Ahsoka is only put on pause because of her investment in Ezra.
I like how he says supposedly strange relationship. No, it is definitely strange. Those two have no chemistry with each other. It is very awkward because they're supposed to be former master and apprentice, which I didn't finish Rebels, so I didn't even know that. But they just act so weird around each other. Like that scene where they first see each other on that like hangar bay, and it's just like dead silence for like a minute or something like that, and they're just looking at each other. It's so weird. It's so strange. Like, no one's normal in Star Wars. No one's a normal person. Very strange.
Now imagine watching all these scenes, but to begin the show we had just watched a 2-minute prologue of Sabine being devastated that this Ezra person sacrificed himself.
Okay, now you've totally lost me here, because do you seriously think that would suddenly make everyone emotionally invested in those two, their relationship that we saw? Like, so what we have is Clancy Brown saying at the ceremony, Ezra Bridger sacrificed himself for the universe, for the rebels, or whatever he said. And then in your version, we would see Ezra sacrificing himself, and then we would see the ceremony scene, and then we'd have all the emotional stuff. I don't think that would actually help. You know, because it wouldn't add more emotion. Oh, okay, so we've seen it now. We already assumed that he died sacrificing himself. Seeing it doesn't change the fact that we're not emotionally invested, and we don't know who they are, we don't know why this is happening, we don't care. Seeing it wouldn't help. Now, conveying these emotions subtly in the show, You wouldn't even need the flashback. You would just feel that. But the problem is they don't deliver on that emotional feeling. They just explain that that happens. And if you had shown a live-action version of the Rebel scene, there's no way we would feel it. There's no way it would make that big of a difference.
These scenes are now less about telling the audience she cares about Ezra and more about building on a relationship previously established.
But that still doesn't help these people that haven't seen Rebels and don't know who these are. Because just showing the flashback scene at the beginning is not previously establishing this relationship. It's like, not in the way that you think, not substantively. It's not really giving us a feel of who these people... We know they care about each other, but we don't know why. We don't know what their connection really is. So it's like I said before, it's better, but it's not the fix that I would go for personally. I would go for something a little deeper, a little more complex. So that way, if you hadn't seen Rebels before and you were really like unsure about getting invested in them, at least you have a strong base to build on in this show, to have some sort of idea. But to be honest, the casual viewer will still be lost. They won't really understand it.
But I digress. Ahsoka inevitably decides to go to Sabine for help on opening the map. Sabine and Ahsoka's relationship is supposed to be the core of the series,
which is absolutely insane to think about when you consider episode 5 with Anakin. Sabine is like not mentioned or shown or referenced at all in relation to Anakin's lesson. It's like it's almost completely forgotten about because Anakin's there, even though that should probably relate to her training Sabine, but it just doesn't, which is crazy. Kind of a tell for the writing.
Now, what's really peculiar about this relationship is how it relates to Star Wars Rebels. So whether we like it or not, this show is over-reliant on pre-existing material. Fine, but what's so strange about this is that Sabine and Ahsoka never interacted with each other in Star Wars Rebels. I don't think the two ever exchanged dialogue with each other, which is fine, but the Ahsoka series started out at a point where the two did try and build a relationship, it failed, and now they are trying again.
Wow, so this is crazy. So Ahsoka and Sabine didn't even have a relationship in Rebels at all. I didn't even know this. So they just made that up. Filoni just made that up at the end. Or I guess at the beginning of this show. Like, yeah, I wanted them to have a something more than just acquaintance. And then they just like, so what would it be? He started training her. It was just another Jedi Master Padawan relationship. We'll need to explain that. Would be a good thing to get a flashback for, to be honest. That would have helped a lot. Because now you're not just confusing you're confusing everyone. Now everyone's confused. People that watch Rebels and people that didn't.
I have a tough time deciding if this was a good or bad idea. I think conceptually I have no issue with this. I would be a hypocrite if I criticized the series for not standing on its own and then also criticize it for doing something not established in pre-existing material.
Well, no, you wouldn't be a hypocrite for saying, I want the show to stand on its own, but I also, of course, want it to follow the lore of the show that it's based on. Like, you can have it so this show doesn't have to do with everything that happened in Rebels, and these characters are on new journeys, but the stuff that happened in Rebels still matters, or lack thereof, that happened. That stuff still has to stay consistent, because it is a universe. These are characters that exist in a universe that has previous installments, and so the rules still need to be kept. There can't be any contradictions, otherwise it's an error. It's a fault in the show.
Where I find the issues lie are with the reasons how this conflict started in the first place. So there's this scene where Ahsoka and Sabine catch up for the first time. There's some good moments here. Sabine clearly expressed her frustration at Ahsoka for being too hard on her. Ahsoka is frustrated with Sabine for being too stubborn and not respecting her wishes. All this stuff works.
How can you say that after everything you just went through? You just went through the fact that most people don't know who these people are and haven't watched Rebels, and then you establish the fact that out of the people that did watch Rebels, because this relationship didn't happen in Rebels, and these people never had any, these two never had any connection, that the Rebels watchers wouldn't know anything about this too. So how can this be good? Well, because they're sharing their emotions, but we don't know what no one knows what that relationship is, because up until now it never existed. So how is it good? And by the way, just as a standalone scene, that's not good. Trust me. The pausing, the constant pausing and not saying anything. Just saying, "Oh, I'm sad." It's like, "I understand." "Oh, you weren't there for me, master." It's like what are we supposed to gain from that? We don't know what. There's nothing. We don't know. It's terrible.
But when building a dynamic between two characters, and a lot of that dynamic is based on stuff that happened in the past, it's not wise to leave the audience in the dark about that information that happened in the past. For example, in the 5th episode, we learn a big reason Ahsoka struggled with teaching Sabine was because of her insecurities about being Anakin's Padawan. This is great.
Why? Why do people still fall for it? It's nothing. Anakin's lesson is literally nothing. There is no actual meaning to what Anakin is trying to explain to Ahsoka, or what Ahsoka learns from this. I don't even know what to call it. It's like nothing. First of all, we don't know what this Anakin is. Is he a figment of her imagination? Is he a ghost? It's really important, but they never explain it. And then second, Sabine is not at the forefront of that journey that Ahsoka's on at all. It's not even casually brought up. It's like Ahsoka's fear of or training of others. Because I remember when we first see live action Ahsoka in Mando, and he's like, "Why won't you train Grogu?" And she's like, "Oh well, I can't risk him having turned to the dark side or whatever, like that." Like hinting that she's still afraid of what Anakin does what Anakin did, and she doesn't want to train people. But it's totally irrational, Anakin's situation, and we know that because we know that Ahsoka has moved on and accepted what Anakin was, both in the Clone Wars and in Rebels. Like she accepted, it's like I mentioned before, she was there on, I remember it now, Mortis, and she understood Anakin's journey to a certain extent. She understood what he would become to a certain extent. So there's a lot of conflicting pieces here, and I just don't think they mesh together properly.
But it's not stated until the 5th episode. We learn from Sabine's point of view that she wanted to train to become a Jedi because of her heartbreak at what happened with her family. This is great, but we don't learn until the 4th episode that her family died. And we don't learn until the last episode that this was her motivation for trying to become a Jedi. I don't need everything spelled out to me in the 1st episode, but this is why perspective is so important. Ahsoka is supposed to be the main character. I'm assuming that because the show is named after her.
Well, calling her a character is a little far-fetched, but I understand the sentiment. It's okay. I understand.
We could find out in the 1st episode the motivations behind her struggle, and then as the series progresses, she wants to learn more about Sabine's struggles, and then when she learns that, the audience learns that at the same time as her. But to begin the series, Ahsoka knows why she struggled, and she knows Sabine's motivations. We, the audience, are just left in the dark. We don't have a character that we can latch onto and connect with. There are a lot of great moments in this 1st episode that allow us to learn about the characters, especially Sabine.
I like that. We don't have anything as far as character for the audience to latch onto. But, there's plenty of great character moments in this episode, including Sabine. There's plenty. It's like, come on. Just hear yourself, dude. It doesn't make any sense. Also, please name one great scene for character moments. I dare you. I don't think you could find one.
But I don't think this episode did a good job at getting us to relate with Ahsoka. She's so emotionally distant in these early episodes.
Well, that doesn't actually change in the later episodes. She doesn't become more emotionally involved. More stuff happens, but she keeps the same blank, emotionless stare for, like, almost all of it. She smiles a little bit sometimes. Or she has, the little worried face, little eyes open up a little bit. but for the most part, it's exactly the same.
While this is a perfectly fine trait to have, she doesn't need to be emotionally distant to the audience, because if she is, then we can't relate to her.
See, but it doesn't have to be exactly like let's take Boba Fett, for example. Before they utterly ruined him in his own show, you see the interviews with Tamir Morrison where he's saying, I didn't want to have to talk as much, because I don't think that's in Boba Fett's character to be as talkative and emotive and as conveying with feelings and thoughts as we're presenting him here. So if you look at classic Boba Fett, he's very quiet. He only speaks when he needs to. You kind of get a sense of what he's thinking through just like his head movements, with his helmet. You just kind of get a feel for that. But you don't really get much talking, and you don't really get much insight to his emotions. But you don't actually need that to be invested in him, at least not directly emotionally. You can be like, okay, I understand what his situation is, and I can relate to myself having to be in that situation, what I would probably do, and seeing what Boba Fett would do. That is where the investment could come in. It doesn't have to be directly emotional. They don't have to be talking to you, expressing their feelings. And that's why Boba Fett could have been a really cool show. Unfortunately, it didn't swing that way. But yes, my point is you don't have to be super emotionally involved to be invested into a character. It's one of the ways, but it's not the only way.
This is something I'm going to continue to talk about in the next few episodes. Episode 1 ends with Sabine opening the map, then she fights Shin and gets stabbed. I don't need to harp too much on why her getting stabbed and surviving is so silly. It's been done so many times now in Star Wars, it's getting ridiculous. But let's move on to episode 2.
Well, fuck that. I'm going to harp on it for a second. I think it's really important, because it's not just indicative of just a lack of care for what Star Wars is, what lightsabers are, what they do, what the rules in the universe are. It really shows that Disney, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, they want in Star Wars for just certain things to happen a certain way. They want to have their big payoffs with the things they think are cool, like the Mandos going back and taking stuff, Thrawn versus Ahsoka and the Rebels. These are things they want to happen. But to ignore blatant world-building contradictions, plot contrivances, basic rules like the fact that lightsabers cut through things, it's really indicative of why these people shouldn't be in charge of things like Star Wars, because it's just like, it's kind of ironic, it's just fantasy to them. Their fantasy, I should say, where they just want certain things to happen and they're willing to just forget whatever the rules, whatever. It's really bad. And for people that argue, Dave Filoni cares. He's the only one who cares about Star Wars, about getting things right and treating the fans correctly. And you see that things like this just like blow that argument out of the water. He doesn't actually care. He just cares about his characters and the way he wants his story to go. And it all sucks. It's all lazy, and it's really sad, to be honest. But it just really sucks.
Right off the bat with episode 2, Sabine not even needing an ounce of recovery from her stab wound is ridiculous. Here Sabine is perfectly fine and ready to go. What stories like these need to do is be very careful with what they show our characters surviving. If people in Star Wars are able to survive superhuman feats, then in the future, stakes in action sequences are lowered because we don't know what a threatening injury is to our characters.
Yeah, so why... See, this is one of the things that like make me so curious about like how he missed it the first time. Like I now I'm like so curious to go back to his Ahsoka season 1, or his first Ahsoka video where he said it was almost great, and see what did he say about this part where the lightsaber went through her and she just survived like the next day. She was totally fine. Like, were you like, it's a little weird, but I'll cast it aside. It's one of the few flaws. Because yeah, it baffles me that you could miss that the first time. It's crazy.
But regardless, Sabine wakes up and Ahsoka is unhappy at what Sabine had done.
Well, yeah, she stole the map that was so important, is so important to the bad guys that they were willing to, like, basically nuke a section of a planet for it. And rightly so, because that leads to the supposed Jesus figure of the Empire, whose return will mark death and destruction to the entire galaxy. So yeah, I would say Ahsoka would be a little justified in being upset over Sabine just stealing that and risking its capture. It's kind of a messed up thing to do, kind of selfish, but whatever.
And through that droid, Sabine is able to get the location of where the droid came from, and off goes Ahsoka. After rewatching this entire second episode, it is clear that Sabine is a far more well-developed and interesting character than Ahsoka is. In this episode, what do we learn about Sabine? We learn that she feels like Ahsoka gave up on her. This is something that allows the audience to sympathize with her.
Please stop saying that. It's so not true. Just because a character feels a certain way doesn't mean the audience automatically sympathizes or feels the same way they do. For all you know, the entire audience was sympathizing with Ahsoka for having to deal with such a brat teenager who doesn't respect her at all. It's like, emotion does not always equal connection. Sorry.
No one likes the feeling of being given up on. We also see Hu Yang low-key roast the shit out of her by saying she has the lowest aptitude for the Force of anyone he has seen.
Yes, and that was the most based thing anyone said in the entire show. That was so awesome because it's so true. She absolutely sucks. So Hu Yang just destroying her was just it was music to my ears. And it's not even fair because Ahsoka and Sabine later shit on Hu Yang. And it's like, oh, why are you so worried about dropping out of hyperspace at the correct spot or whatever? And they just start laughing at him like he's an idiot for following Jedi protocol that has kept them alive for 1,000 generations. So eye for an eye in my view.
But regardless of Ahsoka's supposed dislike of her and Hu Yang telling her she's weak in the Force, Sabine still toughens up and does what the bigger woman should do and tries to mend fences with Ahsoka.
What do you mean be the bigger woman? She messed up. She stole the thing and attracted the bad guys to her and then got stabbed. That's all her fault. So what do you mean if anything, Ahsoka's the bigger woman for not, like, locking her in prison for what she did. And it's absolutely insane. Being the bigger... She's... whatever.
It's strange that the show is called Ahsoka, but for the majority of the season, it's Sabine that the audience relates with.
Alright, dude, just because you related to Sabine for some weird reason doesn't mean literally the entire audience did.
I still wish that her backstory about her family and her motivation for wanting to be a Jedi was established way earlier in the story. I think this series really could have benefited from a series of flashbacks because so much of the past is what affects our characters. You know what could have been a great character beat to loosely connect to the Mandalorian? Have Bo-Katan reach out to Sabine and ask her to join in retaking Mandalore.
Oh, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on Mandalore. It's so crazy. There should be so many more people involved in going back to Mandalore. Not to mention the fact that it was poisoned, supposedly, so no one went back and checked it. It's just all confusing all around. But yeah, so many more people should have been back going to Mandalore. Including Sabine, I would say, her family, if they hadn't died, Boba Fett. I mean, it's craziness. Absolute insanity.
But Sabine rejects this because the thought of her being around other Mandalorians is too painful for her. Or the thought of being at Mandalore is too painful for her, the location where her family died.
Oh, her family died on Mandalore? I thought the Ren clan was on, like, a different planet. God, I really need to watch Rebels, don't I? There's so much lore I haven't caught up on. But but on that point, I guess, would the death of her family overcome the pride of taking back the homeland that had been destroyed by the Empire, which she really doesn't like, as far as I can remember? She wouldn't want them to have control of it, and she would want to have wouldn't it be honoring her family, because that was their goal, to retake it? So it's like finally coming back. She would get it. I don't know, maybe. I'd have to see. That would have been a way more interesting show to watch.
This way we get a cameo from Bo-Katan, which we know Filoni would probably love. We get a reference to the Mandalorian, so there's some connectivity. But most importantly, we get more character development for Sabine.
Okay, I don't agree with the cameo and reference parts just for the sake of it. That's just kind of lame if you just do it for the sake. But I mean, yeah, I'm totally down for more Sabine character development in the Ahsoka show, or any. That would be cool. Just connectivity to the Mandalore stuff, because that would definitely be happening and be relevant. So yeah, that's totally fine.
Even though I do like what they have done with Sabine in this episode, I still think they could have done more to really get us on board with her and her struggles. Now with the other half of the episode, we have Ahsoka on Corellia. There's no other word to use, so I'm gonna say it. Ahsoka is a bitch in these early episodes.
Woo! Tell us how you really feel. My lord. But I mean, you're still incorrect. She's a bitch in all the episodes, not just the early ones. But, you know, kudos to you for being willing to say the truth. Yeah, she is insufferable throughout this entire show.
Now, some may say that's the point and that she has to go on this arc, but here's the thing. In order for a character to go on an arc, they need to have a flaw. Ahsoka has a flaw. She's a jerk. So far, so good. But it's also important that we know that it's a flaw. Animated viewers know Ahsoka is not usually like this.
I mean, she is kind of annoying and irritating in a lot of her adaptations, especially when she was younger. Oh my god, she was so annoying. So much so that Anakin and the Jedi Council and all those were constantly just like, shut up, Ahsoka, you're doing the wrong thing. And she'd be like, you guys don't understand, you don't care about people. And you'd have to, you know, just like sit there like, oh my god, why did I take her on as a Padawan? She sucks. And then in this show, I mean, her flaw isn't that just she's a jerk, it's also that she's just stupid. And she just makes terrible decisions that a Jedi Master of her age definitely should not be making. Or I guess a Jedi former Knight or Padawan that's at Jedi Master level, whatever. She should not be making these decisions with all her experience. There's no way.
But new viewers don't. So from their perspective, she's just a jerk. Think about the show The Last of Us, or the game, the point remains the same. In the beginning of the story that takes place in the present, Joel is an asshole. However, because we had the prologue where he lost his daughter, when we see him as a jerk in the present, we know that's a flaw of his. We can infer that the loss of his daughter has turned him into a bitter man, and that is why he is flawed. With Ahsoka, something similar needed to happen. Maybe we get a flashback of young Ahsoka where she is still all joyful or whatever with Anakin.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it's crazy that when you actually think about what Ahsoka's life has been up to this point, it's insane. I mean, she fought and survived through 2 galaxy-wide wars. She lost pretty much everyone she knew from when she was younger is either dead or a bad guy, so that sucks. So, I mean, I would expect Ahsoka to be, like, I would expect her to even be more cynical and emotionless than she was in this show, really. She should be, like, actually just angry with people really quickly and just, like, super, super uptight and then to herself for her emotions. Yeah, she should be pretty damaged at this point. Wise in her approach to things, not making rash decisions. Yeah, but that's all missed in this show.
Then maybe later on we get another flashback where we see her confront Vader and learn the truth that her master did turn evil.
Isn't that literally what happened in episode 5? A flashback where we found out her master was evil. Even though we already knew that, we didn't need the red lightsaber and the Sith eyes, but they still did it, so that was so funny too. It's like, oh my god, the red lightsaber, he's evil now. It's like the robot in Obi-Wan turning red so you know it's evil. Like it's a PBS show or something. It's funny.
Some of you may get PTSD when I mention flashbacks because the Book of Boba Fett and The Acolyte did them so poorly, but in those two shows, the flashbacks were an overwhelming part of the series. In my version of Ahsoka, they would only be a few minutes per episode, no more than 5 minutes per se. Some may argue that showing Ahsoka learn the truth about Anakin would be fan service, and yeah, it partially would be, but I would support this decision because Anakin being Vader is the reason why Ahsoka is supposedly flawed in this show, so you kinda need to show that moment or at least show how hard it impacted her.
I like how he says supposedly flawed. But even so, I mean, it's not that she's Anakin's Padawan. Is that it's making her, in this guy's eye, it's flawed in that way, I guess. It's that she makes stupid decisions. She doesn't communicate with other characters properly, like we know she can. She's not mentally ill. We know she can, and just like has a lack of understanding of her own history. It's weird. It's this weird middle ground where the writer's knowledge of what people know is sinking into what the characters know. So this is all having to be reiterated, even though people should know this, the as you know sort of thing. That's a big problem.
Plus, there's nothing wrong with a little fan service as long as it serves the story. But without all that, we're just left to question why Ahsoka is so mean to poor Sabine.
What do you mean, poor Sabine? Sabine's been a cunt for, like, the entire show so far. And she messed up big time. Like, still, do you understand how big of a deal stealing that map was? To the entire galaxy, that could have been that could be a death sentence. We don't know yet, because we haven't seen what Thrawn does, but you could blame almost all the events on this show that happened post Sabine stealing the map on Sabine. She's the catalyst for all this. Now, there are other factors, too, that lead to this. Stupid decisions by Hera, Ahsoka, and the New Republic. But those stupid decisions wouldn't even had to be made if Sabine hadn't made, like, the ultimate destructive thing of stealing the map when there was no reason to. She could have just researched it on the ship. Like, you remember what the excuse for that was? It was, oh, I need space to think. It's like, that is such horseshit. No one believes you. You just needed the story to happen, unfortunately.
Towards the end of the first episode, Ahsoka said to Hera that she left Sabine just like she left Anakin. I'm not sure what point was supposed to be made here.
Yeah, don't sweat it, dude. No, nobody does. We're all in the same boat there.
Is she saying this was an issue? Is she saying that she has connection issues after what happened with the Jedi Temple? I don't get the point of that. So come this episode, when they are on Corellia, Hera continues to try to tell Ahsoka to be easy on Sabine. But Ahsoka is like, nah, I can just tell when someone is ready and Sabine isn't. Then for some reason at the end of the episode when Sabine calls her, Ahsoka is more than willing to take her back. Based on 2 episodes of watching Ahsoka in this show, I don't get why Ahsoka would want to take Sabine back.
Well, add the rest of the episodes, too. It still doesn't make sense. And it doesn't even make sense why she would take her on in the first place. See, this is like the main problem that, like, this show had to deal with, is that no one, people that watch Clone Wars, people that watch Rebels, people that didn't watch any of it, no one understood why you would want Sabine to be a Jedi apprentice. No one understood it. It's like, you couldn't just keep her just a normal Mandalorian person and have Ezra be the Jedi, and it's just, she had to be this weird fantasy hybrid of them, even though it made absolutely no sense. And that's why David Tennant was so based when he said you would fail all the Jedi stuff. It was so correct.
Sure, Sabine helped them go to Corellia, but Sabine is also the reason they have to chase after the map in the first place. So I'm not sure what Ahsoka is thinking here. Speaking of not understanding, something that is definitely lacking in general is Ahsoka's motivation in this battle in the first place. Why does she want to stop Thrawn?
Well, it's quite simple, you see. During Ahsoka's morning script reading, she saw in the character lists, oh, Thrawn, that's the bad guy. Okay. And so that's how she knew that she had wanted to stop him. Yeah. It's quite simple, dude. Come on, keep up.
Why is she so invested in this whole thing in the first place? Even after watching episode 5, this isn't entirely clear. Sure, you can say Ahsoka just doesn't want another war to start. While that may be true, that is such a boring answer. Storytelling is about flawed people doing things for deeply personal reasons.
I mean, it can be, but that's not the only reason why someone would do something. Because it's personal. Definitely not deeply personal. That's just an aspect. And also, boring is not... If what he means by boring is, oh, it's really simple, that's straightforward, we've all seen that before, that would have been fine for a motivation if it was good. If the show was good and her motivation was like, okay, I've been through many battles and wars, I've been fighting all my life, and no one is taking the threat of Thrawn seriously, because why should they? He's an idiot. But assuming he was actually a big threat, and no one was paying attention to her, and there was this actual big threat coming, and Ahsoka's like, you guys are all younger, you don't understand how bad this can really get, which, that wouldn't even make sense either, because they fought in the, oh, whatever. But anyway, just like the threat of another war scaring her more than everyone else, because she's one of the older ones, that could be fine, just because it's simple. It would be a fine motivation, if it was good.
You know how in episode 5 Ahsoka has that scene where she looks at all the dead clones and she's upset? What if we turn this into her deeper motivation? The reason she wants to stop the return of Thrawn so badly is because she lived through 2 wars, and all that trauma and pain is something that still lives with her. She does not want to live through another war because she firsthand knows what the horrors of war are like. That would be an excellent motivator for her, but instead we don't get any of that. A big portion of this episode is devoted to the action sequence on Corellia. Usually you want an action sequence to progress the characters in some way. The writers should have used this sequence to explore Ahsoka's trauma, somehow tied this fight into her fears about war or her fears about becoming a master. Maybe she looks at Marok, a masked dude in black armor and a red lightsaber, and that reminds her of Vader, and we see she struggles with that.
Could you imagine this guy reminding you of Vader? This skinny little cosplayer dude, it's like, oh my god, I'm getting PTSD to Darth Vader. Come on, it's a green fart. He was Green Night Sister fart. He was never anything. I would try to engage her character in a fight in maybe a different way. Maybe first of all in like her fighting style. Like, so something you, because remember in the Clone Wars she would use her small aerobic ability to her advantage in fights. Like when she was fighting Grievous or whatever, she would be quick and agile, and that would be like part of her style. But like now she's just like, she's relegated to just like a normal person swinging the lightsaber. And I don't even care if she's like, oh, she's older. It was like, well, she still has the Force. She's still a Jedi. Darth Vader can move around like he did with all his disadvantages. I'm pretty sure Ahsoka could do the same thing.
But instead we get plot development and no character development. This is where I think Filoni has a lot of room to grow as a writer. A lot of these scenes just feel pointless when there is plenty of opportunity to explore the characters on a deeper level. The last thing I want to talk about briefly before we move on is world building. Even though I've stated many times throughout this video that these shows should be shows that stand on their own, I do feel they have an obligation to expand this Star Wars mythos.
Okay, yes, finally we're reaching some good ground here, some common ground, as you will. So yes, this is kind of what I mentioned earlier. Standalone doesn't mean you can or have to ignore the rest of the universe. Like, standalone doesn't mean, oh, well, we don't have to consider the Empire or the larger conflicts or the larger implications of the universe, like the economy, the politics, the smaller wars that are going on, the interplanet conflict. Like, there's so much there that we never see or know about. And shows like these are like the perfect time, and like time periods like these, it's the perfect time to rebuild the Star Wars, like new characters and new stories, new ideas, a new situation that's different from the original trilogy. because if you think about it, most of the Star Wars shows have been set in the middle periods between 3 and 4, and then between 6 and 7 for movies. So there's like it's like Dead Space, where there's like not the video game, like Dead Space, where you can insert more stories of like, oh, I wonder what was happening between those two movies that we never know. Like, what happened that led to this war, to that war, to these people being in charge, those people being in charge. Like, there's a lot of rich ground to cover there, and you can do it. Shows like this could do it. Ahsoka could have done it while continuing existing stories, and yeah. So it's my 2 cents on that.
This could be through the Force or through world building. A lot of people hate the sequels, and fair enough, but they are a part of the canon. And I think in these shows, in this post-Return of the Jedi timeline, they should try and elaborate on the world building.
Well, they can't. They can't, because if they elaborate on it, it will only open the door more to seeing how the sequels are absolutely terrible. And they don't want to excuse those as non-canon just yet. But they can't actually make the world building make sense now and then try to backtrack it later on by continuing the sequel stories, like with the Rey movie or whatever. It's a really bad position to be in, because like in most like Force Awakens videos you see critiques of it, one of the first things people point out is the opening title crawl, where the world building is just like thrown, like I won't say thrown out the door, but it's like rushed through. It's like, okay, we understand you're gonna have all these questions about world building, but like we don't really care, so we're just gonna like move on really quickly. And then you pause it for a second, you're like, wait, hold on. You guys haven't explained this situation. Like, you haven't justified this First Order being in power and these characters being where they are and the state of the galaxy up to this point. But the sequels, they didn't want to take the time to do that. So fleshing out the world now, at this point, at present time, Disney still wants to wrap this canon into the sequel canon, which logically it's impossible. There's too many contradictions. It doesn't make sense. So they'd rather be very vague and leave it alone, like in this show, where they don't want to have to deal with the wider implications of the galaxy at this point. They just want the tiny group of characters going on the adventure to stop Thrawn, and bigger military conflicts or intervention be damned, really. This is one of the big things with the New Republic in this show, is that really there should be more action being taken, but they get sideswept by Filoni writing Leia to just be like, oh yeah, I gave him permission to do the stuff they did. Don't worry about it, because I'm in charge and everyone knows me, so listen to what I say. And that kind of like shuts them up. It's like, okay, the New Republic's not going to do anything, even though they really should. There should be a lot of people that are interested in this everywhere, not just the New Republic, but especially them. And there should be more action being taken that would change the course of the story. So it's a mess all around. But yes, the point is that Disney canon is not something, and Disney canon is not something you want to strive to follow. Like, what's the point in trying to follow a canon that just doesn't make any sense or respect itself at all? Like, what writer really wants to do that? Apparently Dave Filoni, but it's not going to be good.
Because the sequels did such a shit job at explaining the state of the galaxy and what the First Order really is, I think these shows should take some time to develop that. I like hearing how the Republic is repurposing Imperial equipment, or how this one guy explains that former Imperial workers are now working for the Republic. When he says that their loyalty is to whoever is paying them, that could in the future connect with the First Order.
Who somehow had all that money, inexplicably, after being defeated and destroyed by the New Republic, who's now in power. They somehow all have money. And are you talking about the same First Order that we learn and kidnapped and enslaved a bunch of kids to become stormtroopers, and all those stormtroopers are just brainwashed people who were taken from their families when they were kids? And it's like, I don't think it's because they were getting paid well. So I don't think that route's going to plan out.
The reason the First Order was able to rise in the future was because people were more than willing to be paid by them for work. This is not something that needs to be a major part of the show, and it wasn't. I just want to give the show some credit because I've been a little harsh so far.
No, you have been incredibly light on the show so far. Incredibly kind to it. And this is your wrath video on Ahsoka. This isn't even your almost great video. This is your long form critique, and it's still just so soft on the show. There's so many problems that are just getting like whizzed by here.
On to episode 3. Before I talk about anything with Ahsoka or Sabine in this episode, we need to talk about the New Republic scene. Plot points like the ones introduced here infuriate me. Hera is a hero of the rebellion. She is a general and has been actively investigating the attack on the ship in the first episode. So when she comes to conclusions and asks for help, the senators reject her because they dislike her for some reason. Senator Xiono is an asshole simply because the plot demands it.
Well, this is true, but another aspect is that Hera fails to give convincing evidence of the Sith plot or the Empire plot to rise up again. Because it's true, they should be not dismissing her immediately, because she should be, obviously, apparently, she's a respected general who should be, and has been a rebel and knows these people for a long time, so her words should be taken very seriously. But at the same time, when they asked her for evidence, she's like blank face, when there's so much evidence up to this point of this council meeting of Lespine, because there's ships that have been destroyed, there's logs of what happened on Corellia, so there should be plenty of evidence that something's not going right with all the parts that are being taken and the people that have already died, and the ship at the beginning of the show. But this is all just dismissed for some reason. So it's kind of like the Acolyte scene between the Jedi and the witches, where like both sides are like doing things that make no sense, and they're just talking past each other when they shouldn't be at all. They should be countering with information that they have, but no one does for some reason. Don't know.
I hate this trope so much, when someone who clearly has earned the trust of others is not given that trust. Now, I can understand wanting to tie into the world building of the New Republic. A reason they allowed the First Order to rise was because they tried to avoid conflict at all costs. Here, one of the senators says as much. That's good.
That is not good. Are you telling me like these people that fought in the rebellion for years against the Empire, who understood how evil it was and all the horrors that it committed, would be suddenly pacifists against potentially it rising again? It's like people like Mon Mothma, who we saw in the Andor show, were at risk for them and their families on a multitude of occasions for daring to fight the Empire. It's like, no, these people, if anything, the New Republic would be extra paranoid, like it is in that one episode of Mandalorian, season 3, the Dr. Pershing episode, where it's like they're really cracking down on Imperial forces to the point where anyone stepping out of line, they just get like scarily rehabilitated, like it's a horror movie. They go into like space Arkham to get re-educated on what the New Republic is, and that like that directly matches with this sudden like, oh, we don't want to investigate that, like if there's nothing wrong, you know if we don't see anything, there's nothing we can really do. It's like, no, they would be extra paranoid. They would be making sure all these old rebel people, they'd all be making sure that like the Empire could never exist again in any fashion. They'd be extra paranoid about it.
I wish the scene focused on that more than it did focusing on Senator Xiono and Hera shaming him for not participating in the war, which, by the way, is a really rude thing to do. On to Sabine and Ahsoka. This was a bit of a slower episode, which I don't mind at all. These kinds of episodes allow us to look deeper into our characters and see what motivates them.
Well, in better shows, yeah, that's true.
Now, these scenes in this episode do develop the characters, and you'd be incorrect to say they don't.
Ooh, okay. Well, please enlighten me, sir. I'd love to know how I'm incorrect in my assessment that in these slow, boring, nothing scenes, Worst scenes in history. I hate him. That character is actually developed. Please, I'd love to know.
We learn more about Sabine and why she struggles so much using the Force. During the dogfight, we see Ahsoka take a risk and trust Sabine, which builds the relationship and the plan works out.
Wait, I'm sorry. What was the risk there? Their ship was being attacked, and Ahsoka was like, "Okay, Sabine, I need you to be on the gun, and to defend us with the gun, because it's a gun, and we're getting gunned on." So I mean, it was more just like, you're the only other human, or I guess I shouldn't say that. That's racist. You're the only other person of Star Wars on this ship, so I need you to get on the gun so we don't die. I don't know if that's trust rather than just like rationale. I think anyone would have done that. And also, there was no risk. Those ships. Did you see those shots as they bounced off Ahsoka's ship? They did absolutely nothing. You get more damage than laser tag. I mean, come on.
The issues here stem from the development not tying into the larger character arcs of the season, at least not much. Come episode 5, we are supposed to buy into this arc of Ahsoka being haunted by her past and of her former master. Also, mind you, this is the 3rd episode. Of all 3 episodes, Anakin was mentioned only once. I don't need Anakin mentioned because it's fan service. They need to mention him because his relationship with Ahsoka is supposedly a big part of her character.
Yes, and that doesn't mean that he would have to be directly referenced for us to understand his impact on her. Like, how many times does Tony Stark bring up his dad? Just in a span of everything, all the scenes, everything he ever says. If you took the percentage of how much of that was actually about his dad, it would be very minuscule. But of course, we understand that the way his dad treated him had a big impact on who he became and how he acts. And we know that, and we don't need to have it mentioned like, Jesus, Tony, you're acting just like Howard again. Is like, or Tony Stark doesn't have to say, I hate my dad, and he was an asshole, and that's why. We don't need that. We can just understand that impact is had on him through what he does and what he says.
There's a line Ahsoka says to Sabine about anger and frustration are quick to give power. Then Ahsoka goes to Huyang and tells him how Sabine is struggling. This could have been a really good moment for Ahsoka to share some of her fears about this legacy of Jedi that she's a part of. Maybe Sabine's willingness to dig deep into her anger is something that concerns Ahsoka because Anakin was like that as well. Huyang even brings up Ahsoka's role in this Jedi lineage, but she just makes a face and moves on. The series would have been far better off if we could see Ahsoka's insecurities on a consistent basis in these early episodes. In this episode, Ahsoka is doing a pretty good job as a teacher.
Yeah, it's because she's not actually teaching her anything. She's just telling her weird platitudes about the Force that we've all heard before and agreed don't actually tell us anything about how the Force works. Like when she's like, trust in the Force, let it give you strength, don't be blinded by the shadow or whatever. Anger is quick to give you power. Don't get into it. It's like these are all very vague. Very vague. We actually get it's funny, we actually get a little more into what the Force actually means in terms of training in the Acolyte. And that in that first one of those early scenes at the Jedi Temple where that Irish Jedi dude is talking to the Padawans. It's not much, but I think it actually might be a little more than what Ahsoka gives us, which is crazy. But usually in Star Wars, it's been very thin all around. There's not really lots of deep diving into Force training and what it means, at least in Disney canon.
She's a lot more patient than she was in the first 2 episodes. She takes a risk and trusts Sabine during the dogfight, and then we see the two of them get along a lot better than we did before. What if instead of them getting along, there were still issues between the two?
Yeah, like the issue of you stealing the map, which should probably count as high treason, honestly. Risking the map that leads to the discovery of a bad guy, risking it to the enemy, and risking the safety of the organization you work for and all the people that it protects. Yeah, I'd say there still should be a few issues between them.
Now, I'm not talking about Ahsoka being a jerk, I'm talking about Ahsoka being a poor teacher because of her fears. A great way Ahsoka's arc could have gone this season is that she sees a lot of Anakin in Sabine. Not so much the power levels or whatever, but the anger and the trauma about losing family. Seeing how quickly Sabine resorts to anger is something that concerns Ahsoka. Maybe deep down, Ahsoka doesn't want to train Sabine not because Sabine can learn to use the Force, but because she can't control her fear and anger, and that could lead her to the dark side. So in episode 4, when Sabine does make the decision to give Baylan the map, that could stem from Sabine not feeling welcome by Ahsoka.
Okay, whoa, hold on. So first of all, how would this reconcile with Ahsoka being okay with Luke training Grogu? Because remember, her fear was, I don't want to train Grogu myself because I fear the dark. But she thinks if Luke does it, it's fine. Does she think that no more? Is she like TLJ Luke, where she's like, no more Jedi can be trained? You know, it's all a very cynical view. It's just she's like, oh, everyone will turn out like Anakin, because that's like really dumb. She knows they didn't. She knows plenty of Jedi who didn't. She knows Anakin, and she knows what was that? What was that chick in the Clone Wars? The Barriss Offty, the evil Jedi, and then there was General Krell. So she's vaguely aware of a few Jedi that have turned evil and used the Force for bad, but she knows that a majority didn't. A majority of them were slaughtered down, and so this fear of everyone's going to become Anakin. Again, this brings back to, doesn't she know that Anakin was destined to do this, and then this was like the way of the universe making him save the galaxy and bring balance to the Force? I could be wrong, but I swear, like, she knows this through the fact that Luke probably would have told her, oh yeah, he was my dad, and he redeemed himself in the end, and there's a prophecy there. I read a few books on it. You want some? I have some old Jedi books I found on this planet. You want? So, and then, okay, so that was that. And then the other point was something. Give me a sec. I'll get it. 1 sec. Ahsoka. And then it was about Sabine. And it was, oh, right. It was Sabine giving the orb thing to the Sith because she didn't trust Ahsoka. That's still terrible. Not only would she be selfish for doing that, that does not justify her giving the map to Baylan. Unless we're gonna go the route of Sabine is so selfish that she wants to see Ezra again, that she's willing to risk everyone else's life and put all their lives at risk and the whole galaxy at risk just to see if Ezra's on the off chance that Ezra's still alive, which is the reality of the show. That's what happened. The trust of Ahsoka. It's like, oh, I don't trust you that much. I don't like you that much, so I'm just gonna risk letting everyone die. It's like, no way, come on. No way.
This way, Ahsoka's flaws have consequences, and this is why she is forced to go on the character arc. This seems to be a consistent issue through most of the Disney Plus shows recently. Even the really shitty ones like the Book of Boba Fett, Mando Season 3, or The Acolyte have the same issues.
Even the really shitty ones. I wonder what he thinks about Kenobi as a show. I'd be curious to understand his perspective on it. Does he know that Kenobi is possibly just as bad as Ahsoka? In some ways worse? And for the reasons that he hates Ahsoka, like world building and character contradiction and scenes that don't progress character and fights that don't progress character, like all these things happen in Kenobi to startling degrees. And Kenobi's Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's not like Ahsoka. I mean, he might think Ahsoka might be a more important character to him, but I mean, they did this to Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the most recognizable characters in Star Wars, so I'm curious. I'm just curious what he thinks about that. And Mando Season 1 and 2, of course. I'm sure he thinks those are great for some reason.
The stories establish these character traits in these backstories that are interesting, but when it actually becomes time to explore this trauma on the characters and how it negatively impacts their lives, the storytellers either barely touch on it or are too afraid to touch on it at all. In Ahsoka, I'm not inventing new stuff here. We are all told these things about Ahsoka having trauma about war, Ahsoka having insecurities about Anakin, and Sabine wanting to train because she lost her family. I'm just taking what was established and actually applying it to the story to make these characters more three-dimensional.
Oh, that's very admirable of you, sir. And someone had to try. I guess it should be you, and can't count on the writers too.
At this point in the story, I don't know why deep down Ahsoka is doing anything. Why is she training Sabine? Does she just feel guilty about not training her well before? Does she see something in Sabine that reminds her of herself? As far as I'm aware, she wants to stop Thrawn because war is bad, and she is training Sabine just because Sabine and Hera asked her to. This is surface level development, and it's a shame Filoni didn't want to go that extra mile.
Well, he can't. And he probably thought, if you showed this video to Dave Filoni, he would be like, but I did all those things. All these things you're talking about, the character development and the wider world consequences, I did all that. That was all there. Did you not watch the show? The scene at that little table when Ahsoka and Sabine and Hera and all them, when they talk, or on the ship when they're talking, or when Baylan and Ahsoka are talking, that was all character development. I don't know. You guys aren't media literate, are you? You guys really don't understand. I'm a storyteller. I'm a master craftsman. So I guess it's a shame you guys didn't get it. So, well, better luck in season 2.
Moving on to the end of the episode, as Sabine and Ahsoka enter the atmosphere, we see Purrgil, the famous space whales from Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, they're famous now. Okay, I thought no one watched Rebels, but these are the well-known creatures. Everyone's heard of the Purrgil. Oh yeah, they're the giant space whales. They can travel through hyperspace, and they go to another galaxy to die, and then their bones make a little ring around a planet. Classic Star Wars Purrgil. Gotta love them.
For those who had seen Rebels, this scene is really cool.
Oh wow, I see the thing from the thing that I watched with the thing, and there's the things, and they're doing the things that I know the thing that they do. I've seen Star Wars before. I like the Purrgil. Yay! 7 out of 10.
When we see the whales, we instantly know what it means. And they even played the same music that played when the whales took Ezra and Thrawn. What's the issue? Anyone who has not seen Rebels has zero emotional attachment to these whales.
Why would anyone be emotionally invested in them? Were the space whales was there a guy space whale that we talked to or learned about in Rebels? Was there a main one that we actually had characterization? Or were we just emotionally attached because they were cute giant animals with the big eyes, and they made the sound, the whale sound. And he's funny, Bob the space whale. He's like this. I'm not even gonna go there.
As far as they are concerned, when the whales show up, it's just a cool scene with animals in the sky. Only afterwards does Hu Yang explain the significance of these whales and that they can enter hyperspace. This is a scene where they are telling instead of showing. You know what change to the series could have made this scene so much better?
If it didn't exist.
I know, the answer is gonna be shocking. If the prologue of the series showed the whales taking Ezra and Thrawn.
I don't know why he keeps saying that. It's if we saw the whales beforehand, we'd suddenly be just directly emotionally involved with them now. It's unless he's saying, okay, so we would know that, okay, the space whales are going to take Ahsoka and Sabine directly to where Ezra is. But we don't even know that because we don't know anything about the space whales themselves. Okay, so we're supposed to assume that these are the same whales or the same pod that took Ezra and Thrawn. We're supposed to assume that this means that we'll be able to use them the same way to travel to where Ezra and Thrawn are in another galaxy, by the way, which is insane. We'll assume the whales will just go there because they only have 2 possible locations to be. And we have to assume that once we get to where they are, that we'll be able to get back, and that Ezra and Thrawn will still be in the same place they landed, in another galaxy. They're supposed to get all this from the fact that the space whales are here. It's like, I don't think so.
As we established in the first 2 episodes, having this prologue gives us emotional context behind Ezra and Thrawn's disappearance.
No, it gives us informational context, not emotional context. And the context doesn't make any sense, but even then it wouldn't be emotional.
But now I can also say the prologue gives us emotional context behind the whales. If we saw the whales take Ezra and Thrawn away in the first episode, that means when we see them here too, not a single line of dialogue needs to be said for the audience to understand why seeing these whales here is so important.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe a little apprehension about going inside of a whale's mouth to another galaxy would merit some dialogue, just a line or two. From, like, Sabine being like, are you insane? Well, not Sabine. Sabine's not there. Because she went with... God. I need to rewatch the show, but I do not want to. So from, like, Ahsoka being like, wow, I'm just really nervous about this, because I don't know if this is going to work. And especially, like, Q Yang should be like, yeah, my mission protocol states that we not commit suicide needlessly. So that would be a good start. That'd be something.
This is an example of showing over telling. Storytelling 101.
Why do so many people mess this up? It's like, okay, let's take Rise of Skywalker. When we see the shot of the 10 billion Star Destroyers, that's technically showing us, not telling us that the Final Order is powerful, but that doesn't mean that it makes sense or is good. So, oh yeah, it's showing us the information. Well, the information is still, it's still bad. It doesn't make the show better just because they showed us the terrible instead of telling it to us. Show don't tell has very specific context. It just doesn't, it's not an end-all be-all for quality for a story or a plot point or anything encompassing a narrative.
I'm repeating this point a lot, I know, but I cannot emphasize enough how much my added prologue benefits the story. As it stands, episode 3 was alright. Some cool moments, but a lot more missed opportunities.
Some missed moments. The world building was trash. The character motivations and exploration was complete garbage. The action wasn't that good. It was only what do you say? It was only a surface level. And all these elements, they just didn't connect properly. But yeah, it was fine. It's all right. I'd give it a 6. It's cool.
Episode 4 is the best episode of the series without question.
Look, okay, I'll be the first to admit, it's hard to remember a lot of the specific details in each episode. I probably still have a better understanding than most people, but it's hard to remember exactly how to rate each episode. But I'll say this, I'm definitely for sure, the only way an episode in this show gets best episode is by caveat, by being the least worst. That is the least bad. That is the only way a show gets best in this context, because guarantee you there's this, first of all, the overarching awful stuff is in every episode, and there's like really big awful stuff specifically in each one. So I don't think without question is as definitive of a phrase as you'd want to use.
It feels like its own contained story in that it has a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, well, so do my shits. I mean, it doesn't... How is it... well, whatever. It's fine. It's okay. Yeah, it's a contained story. That's okay.
Characters make active decisions in this episode, which, again, is important. And sue me, the fights in this episode are awesome.
Okay, no, come on. Let's calm down. There were some fine choreography in certain parts, but they were not awesome. That's what we call an over-exaggeration of the reality of events. That's what we say in the high art film class. It's correct terminology.
But let's start at the beginning. Sabine and Ahsoka are preparing to go attack Baylan and get the map. Simple stakes. Sabine is a little nervous and Ahsoka is trying to help her. Some of the dialogue here is a bit clunky, but the scenes still work.
Oh, okay. Well, moving right along. Now, I would have loved to hear what dialogue he thought was a bit clunky, or why the scene still functioned fine despite that. But yeah, it's okay. It's only an hour-long video. We don't have time for pitty little details such as those. As he says, he's like a bit clunky. It's like, I don't know what he's referring to, but that's probably an understatement.
Now, the main reason this episode worked so well was because of what was set up in the beginning. Ahsoka tells Sabine that if they can't get the map away from the enemy, then no one can have the map. More importantly, Ahsoka asks Sabine if she can count on her.
Which is a stupid question. Obviously, she can't. Why would you, again, trusting the fate of the galaxy to this, like, 26-year-old who already disobeyed you and gave the map to the enemy in the first place? Let's put our thinking caps on for this one, guys.
Sabine says yes, and then they make their way to Baylan. This is a fantastic moral dilemma.
What is the dilemma? The fate of one guy who's probably dead anyway versus the fate of trillions of people in your own galaxy. What is the dilemma? This is not a dilemma. This is not like a trolley, bro. This is like the easiest decision in history. But of course, easy decisions, that's not a Sabine's strong suit. She will not be bogged down by the easiness of decisions. She will make them hard, even if they are easy. That's her defining character quality, defining trait.
And in a way, it's kind of like the trolley problem, except more personal.
Oh my god, he said it! He said it was a trolley problem! I can't believe it! I swear, trolley problem is one of those things that's just been ruined by the internet. People think that any choice between two things that has a moral component to it is just a trolley problem.
Would you sacrifice the life of a person you consider to be a brother for the safety of millions or billions of people? There are no easy answers here.
There's no easy answers. Oh my god. I don't trust this guy with the suicide vest. Oh my god. You were just like, oh, well, there's all those people in that hospital that will get blown up if I don't press the button. But I guess, on the other hand, there's me. There's me. I guess it's fine. All those people, they're probably gonna die anyway of sickness. I'll just press the button. Boom! Easy decision for this guy. Kudos to him. I wouldn't be able to make it that quickly, but some people are just built different.
And a decision must be made. So Sabine and Ahsoka along their way run into Shin and Marok. There's nothing much here to dissect. The fights are cool. The backdrop of Cetos is great for a lightsaber fight. The unique color palette of the trees along with the glows of the lightsabers works in tandem together nicely.
Yeah, I know. It's such a shame, right? That fight could have taken place in a good show, and it would have been complimented for having such an amazing set dressing for a cool lightsaber fight.
While this is all happening, our characters are faced with a countdown timer. It's by no means a unique narrative trick, but the reason it is done so often is because it works.
Yep, and I guess we just have to accept that computers downloading space magic coordinates just takes that specific amount of time to be done. I don't know why. I guess it's okay, but it's just interesting, the transfer of witch magic Google Maps to the space computer hyperspace drive. I wonder how that transfer actually works. I wonder how they built the technology for that. I'm sure after thousands of years of this galaxy existing, there would have been some magic alchemy components to technology. That'd be fun to explore a little bit.
Not only do they need to get the map, but they also need to do it within a specific set of time. This adds stakes to the conflict, and that is always a good thing.
Why do you have to speak in all these absolutes? It's like, okay, if there's a ticking clock, that's a good thing, always. If there's stakes, that's a good thing, always. It's like, can you at least say, having stakes that are well done, that's a good thing. Always. Or having a ticking clock that's well integrated into the story and the narrative, that's a good thing. Always. Or, you don't even have to say always, The phrase most of the time, generally, these are nice, helpful words that prevent you from being logically trapped. You have these caveats that you work your way out of and just say, oh, yeah, most of the time, generally, in the conventional sense. Well, I mean, I guess it's true what they say, only the Sith deal in absolutes.
Ahsoka inevitably finds Baylan, and this fight is the first thing that felt very different upon my second viewing. Baylan is for sure an interesting character.
No. Baylan has something that we in the business like to call interest potential. He says things that are vaguely appealing, where it's like, ooh, if we expanded on those ideas, that would be interesting. But there's no middle ground, like middleman to connect the pieces and give us that interesting perspective. It's shut away after only like never more than a few minutes, and we never get to explore his what does he think about the Jedi? What does he think about the Empire and the fall of the Force users and everything? What does he think about Luke Skywalker and the potential new Jedi Order? Does he know about it? What are his thoughts on Ahsoka and Sabine that are more than like a few words? Just anything would be awesome.
A lot of that is absolutely because of Ray Stevenson's performance. He adds this mystery to the character that you can't help but want to learn more. He's complex enough to where we are intrigued by his character and we want to see what he does next. Initially, when watching the show week to week, a lot of his intrigue stemmed from the audience thinking we would get answers. All series we are getting teased over and over again. What are his goals? What is his master plan? At the end of the season, the only answer we get is that Baylan is interested in the Mortis gods and what they could potentially offer.
Oh, and by the way, trying to reintroduce the Mortis stuff, that's such a terrible idea. I mean, you talk about like the World Between Worlds being a terrible. I mean, the Mortis is even like, there's so few people that actually know about that. Maybe they've heard of it, but like even fewer actually understand what it is about. Most people don't. I'm not even sure I do fully, so I think you just want to kind of leave that behind. That's like weird lore and stuff that I don't think Star Wars needs to just have a coherent story first before we start digging into all that.
So now, knowing that Baylan's vagueness still doesn't have any answers, we're probably gonna have to wait another 2 years to get some answers, and it makes me lose interest in the character. In the second episode, Shin is talking to Baylan. She asks what they hope to find in Peridia. Baylan says some will find war, some will find unimaginable power, and some will find a new beginning. Alright, that's cool and cryptic. Do we know what any of this means?
It means that we can get 10 billion videos saying that Dave Filoni is this mastermind genius who, despite all the toxic fans and bullies on the internet, he's managed to weave this incredible story together in mystery and way better than JJ ever did. He's actually exploring the deeper meanings of the Force, and you have the thumbnails with like the arrows pointing at the little thing in the background. It's just like that's pretty much it for that.
Nope. During this fight, Baylan tells Ahsoka that in order to create, we must first destroy. That's cryptic and vague, and I still have no clue what it means. Am I an impatient viewer that just wants all of the answers immediately? Maybe, but I have a hard time being invested in these answers when I have no clue when season 2 of the show is coming out.
Well, if I had to guess, I'd say it would be around the same time as Rian Johnson's trilogy. That'll probably be when it comes out. About 2038, maybe? And it'll be a quick release on Disney+. And they'll release all the episodes at once. Yeah, that'll probably be it. Hopefully. I mean, if it was up to me, it'd be coming out, next month. I can't wait for more Ahsoka. I need it. I crave it.
But even if there was a release date, it's a much bigger issue that TV shows need 3 years between seasons now. This is just unacceptable. I don't care about the modern streaming market. I really don't. TV shows should be able to release a season every year, maybe 2 years. 3 is unacceptable. But anyway.
Oh, I agree so hard. I remember back when I was a kid, like a show like Burn Notice or like Shameless or something like that. I mean, if it once it got popular, they'd start pumping episodes out, like, and it was insane, the production time for some of these, and you'd hear in like behind the scenes like how pressed they were to get it done in time, or something went wrong so they had to redo and like add a couple hours to shooting, and it was insane. And now like COVID and the writer's strike is done, so now they just have no excuse. Now they're just sitting on their hands, writing 1 page of the script a week and just shooting nothing. And now the behind the scenes are all of them just like eating at the snack bar and not actually working. So yeah, I agree. It's a real shame that shows are so slow now. Now, for shows like Arcane or whatever that take like a lot of intricate detail, I understand why stuff like that still takes a while. But yeah, overall, things are just taking way too long to come out.
Ahsoka and Baylan fight. Baylan throws around Anakin's name a lot during this fight. He says that his legacy was of death and destruction, and so will Ahsoka's. Baylan is trying to play into Ahsoka's insecurities here by talking about Anakin. But here's the issue. When Baylan brings up Anakin, this is the second time in the series Anakin has been mentioned. When we get to episode 5, we learn that Anakin's legacy weighs heavily on Ahsoka. I'm going to continue to repeat myself because this is such a big thing.
Oh, I agree. It's really important to know. There's so many questions that you have immediately. You're like, why does Baylan? What does Baylan know about Anakin? About exactly what happened with the rise of the Empire? How much evil he really did, all that, and then I think I said it before, but Ahsoka's talked to Luke, so it's like, does she? Why is it? Wait, does she know he got redeemed in the end? Does that affect her at all, knowing that Anakin made the right decision in the end, and he saved the galaxy by killing Palpatine and stopped the whole war? Why should we care? Why should we care?
Through 4 episodes of the season, aka half of the season, there is zero inclination that Anakin's legacy is weighing on her. Absolutely none. Sure, we can see Ahsoka is not as joyful as she once was, but again, that is not enough. When Baylan talks about Anakin, we need some sort of setup beforehand that this is a trigger for Ahsoka. The audience at this point has no clue how Ahsoka feels about Anakin. People who watched the animated shows can infer a few things, but even those viewers don't entirely understand. This fight is all payoff to stuff that wasn't set up.
Yeah, and I think the smarter approach for this fight and for their conflict through the entire season would have been paralleling their views of the Jedi, because most people probably don't even realize this from what Ahsoka does, because they just don't bother re-explaining it or re-establishing it. Ahsoka was not a big fan of the Jedi either. In fact, she left the Jedi Order and left Anakin. Right? So it's just, and you can draw that with Baylan, who also lost hope in the way the Jedi did things. And there can be a sort of understanding. It's like, okay, we both agree that there was a problem, but our solution was different. And you can have that kind of moral conversation over what was the right thing to do in the Jedi problem. And it's just off the top of my head. That's one approach you can go. You can just go off the general experience of the Galactic Civil War. They had the conflict for that. It's like, why did they both choose the sides they did? Why did Baylan and Shin go towards the helping of the Empire, and why did Ahsoka go towards the Rebels? It could have gone the totally opposite way. I could totally see that happening, but just get none of that. Such a shame.
If we had been given any indication that Ahsoka is insecure about her relationship to Anakin, whether that be through a flashback, or a conversation with another character, or a moment of reflection on her own, then when Baylan tries to bait her with that, it can absolutely work. Maybe the way Baylan is able to defeat Ahsoka is because he keeps talking about Anakin, and this makes Ahsoka angry to where she loses focus, thus resulting in her defeat. Then in the next episode, Ahsoka needs to go on an arc to confront those feelings.
I just don't know. I feel like this is not the right approach to take with this Ahsoka. An Ahsoka who's been through as much as this one has and who's older and supposedly supposed to be more wise. I just feel that getting emotional over someone simply trying to bait her is not something that she would fall for at this point. Like, I could totally see younger Ahsoka falling for something like that. I think she even has in some points let her emotions get the best of her. But, like, if she falls for it now, like, what was the point of all those lessons and experience if she just falls for the same traps? Really, I think it should be Sabine getting baited by Baylan or Shin. Say, oh, you lost Ezra, and blah, blah, blah. And she draws on that because Sabine's experienced, but still younger and more impulsive. And doesn't have, and then that could be Ahsoka. You could use Ahsoka, not you. Ahsoka could use that experience of Anakin and to relate it, losing him to Sabine losing Ezra and teach her, and she could actually teach her something, and there could be the drawing reason for her Jedi training for this is controlling her emotions. It's classic. It's been done before, but and if it ain't broke, right?
This would work very well, but instead, we just got some vague comments about Anakin that the viewer doesn't entirely know how to interpret. Missed opportunity. But moving back to the better part of the episode, Ahsoka is defeated and Baylan confronts Sabine.
Defeated? You mean thrown off the side of a cliff to her certain death that she certainly will die from, right? It's like defeated makes it sound like, oh, she'll get him next time, but she really shouldn't in this case.
This scene is perfect. The moral dilemma that was set up before is now being paid off. I know I complained that the revelation of Sabine's family dying should have been brought up earlier, but even if it was still brought up late into the season, killing off her family was a great decision. It adds a completely new layer to Sabine and her motivations. This is one of the few examples where Filoni took information about the character's backstory and actually used it to add depth to the character.
Whoa, pump the brakes here. Am I missing something? When did Sabine's family come into that interaction at all? Please tell me if it did. I don't remember. I thought that Baylan was appealing to her want to see Ezra again. And he was like, hey, if you come with me, I promise we won't stab you in the back later, totally. We're definitely not Sith anything who lie. And you can go see Ezra again, and I'll get what I want, which is, like, peace or save the galaxy. And then she accepts it despite Sabine's not okay. I was about to say Sabine's not a retard. I mean, look to yeah, I don't think I can make that statement definitively, but she's not dumb enough from what we've seen of her to make this decision, knowing what Ezra sacrificed, to risk undoing it all just to see him again. That's, from what I remember, that's not something, we'll say classic Sabine would do. Definitely not.
It was such a brilliant idea. So the moment comes, and Sabine chooses family over the galaxy.
Oh, right, because Ezra's family. Even though, weren't they romantic interests in the later seasons? Is that something I just told? Ezra definitely had a crush on Sabine in, like, the seasons that I watched. But I remember hearing that they were, like, in a relationship in, like, season 4, season 5, whatever later season it was. I just, because there's no way he's talking about her dead family. What would that have to do with anything here? She didn't choose them when she gave him the hyperspace orb thingy. So what is he choosing family? She's just being selfish. That's what she's doing. You don't have to sugarcoat it. She's just being a terrible person. And that's not to say that terrible people can't be good characters. It's just in this case, it seems like a blatant contradiction, considering she's supposed to be like one of the good guys, and she gets presented as such as a good guy for the rest of the season, and the writer agrees that she's a good person who's in the right, even though her actions do not reflect that. They reflect someone who's willing to aid in basically a galaxy-wide genocide. But, par for the course when you want to see your loved one, I guess.
This is great because Sabine made an active choice that revealed to us more about her character. She is not just telling us how much Ezra means to her, she is showing us. She made a human and flawed decision, and that is what good storytelling is about.
Nope, I'm very sorry. Being retarded is not what good storytelling is all about. Being flawed, yes. Being totally stupid, unjustly, no. That is not good storytelling. I don't think that's in the dictionary definition. Although it could be in your personal one, everything's subjective, right? There is no objective quality. Of course, this guy didn't say that, so don't worry. It's fine. Some people do, and it's insane. It is crazy.
Now, I will say this. In the future of Sabine's story, if this decision she made is never brought up again, I will be furious. She made a selfish decision, and she must face the consequences of that decision.
Ooh, okay, yes. Show some spine. I want to see that revenge, that Sabine should be punished for her actions. She was a bad girl, right? She was a dirty girl, a bad girl. Oh, sorry. Let my emotions get the best of me, just like Sabine did. But I'm surprised he's like going on this thing like, oh, in the future, I hope we see her get punished for this. Unless he's talking about later in this show, but he seems so adamant that there's going to be like more seasons or whatever. It's like, did you see the reaction this show got? It wasn't exactly bombastic, so maybe in the Mando and Grogu movie we'll get a continuation for Sabine's story. I sure hope so.
I'm going to elaborate on this much more when we get to the final episode of the season. So episode 4 was the best episode of the season. There were setups and payoffs, there was good action, and there were pretty good visuals. The issues with Ahsoka's story are still there, but that doesn't take away from the other positives of the episode.
Okay, I'm not going to say I agree with all those positive remarks, but I'm sure I could be argued into saying this one was the best, just 'cause it had some okay visual design, like the forest, and some of the shots were fine. I don't agree with the character stuff and the fight scenes, but sure, we can say this is the best episode for now. But again, I could be argued into anything at this point for this show. It's all technicalities.
But before continuing on with the rest of this video, only 12% of my viewers are subscribed to this channel.
Huh. I wonder. I'm pretty new to YouTube analytics, as it were, so I don't know if that's high or I assume that's super low. Most YouTubers that do the whole like only some of you this proportion of you are subscribed are usually at like 30 or 40%, sometimes in the 20s. So I assume 12% is pretty low. Yeah. I don't know, man. Maybe it means you need to up your game. Give people something that they really crave. Which I know I can't talk, 5-hour response video where it's just me talking. I'm sure that's very appealing to a lot of people. But, to each his own. Good luck to you, man. Really, good luck. It's a hard world in this YouTube arena, and, we all gotta do the best we can. But, anyway, back to it.
So if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing for more content like this. Thank you. Episode 5 is the character arc episode.
What is the arc? Please, the arc, what is the arc that she turned into Ahsoka the White, and she's been reborn? She's a born-again Jedi. Come on, it was so thin, and no one understands what she was trying to learn in this episode. No one. There's so many different. It's like looking at like a Renaissance painting, and there's like 500 different interpretations of what the artist was talking about. It's literally the same thing, except it's because there's so much. There's so much. It's so vague, It's not like so introspective and interesting that you can pull so much out of it. It's just like you don't know what direction it wants to go in. You just don't understand what it's trying to tell you. It's so bad.
After being a bit of a downer all series, Ahsoka has a lesson with Anakin. Afterwards, she feels like she has regained her purpose and is ready to go to save Ezra and Sabine. I remember when this episode came out, I was hella confused with what Anakin's lesson actually was, and based on the other countless Reddit posts and discussions everywhere, other people were confused as well. I even rewatched my video from a year ago, and I don't agree with the conclusion I came up with in that video.
It's so funny just to imagine all the Reddit guys just arguing on like a thread for hours, like, no, so when he said snips, you can't let your blah blah blah, and there's like, no, because remember back in season 3, episode 16 of Clone Wars, when they went to Utah and she said to him, and she had her arms crossed and everything. It's just funny. It's just the cursed form of nerd arguments. It's just insanely convoluted, especially on Reddit. I mean, I can't imagine. And even more so when like what you're given as the story is just so thin that you have to make up so much to make it make sense. You have to invent all these ideas that the writer must have had for direction. It's just, I almost think that is like Dave Filoni's genius. He actually makes the audience do all the writing for him. He just has to present like the vague appearance of these stories in this direction, but it's really you that's doing the work. That really sucks.
Here is my interpretation of this arc, and why I don't think it was done well. I apologize for repeating a lot of what I've already said in this video, but it must be done. So Ahsoka may have some trauma from the war, but for the most part after the Clone Wars, she was doing okay. She devoted herself to helping the rebellion, and she did that for a long time. Everything changed once Ahsoka learned that her former master Anakin is alive and has turned into Darth Vader. Now because this was never shown, not even in animation, we aren't entirely sure how this affected Ahsoka. By the beginning of the Ahsoka series, she is nothing like her old self. She is rude, emotionally distant, and seems to just focus her life on stopping a war.
I wouldn't call her like rude. She's annoying, but she's not annoying because she's annoying because of what she says, not really how she says it, unless you mean slowly. And it's just, that's annoying. And it's like, speak a little faster and more than 3 words at a time. But I mean rude. Blunt, maybe. But I think rude's just that's a little bit of Sabine cope right there, where this guy just wants Sabine to, oh, why are you being mad at Sabine? She's sad, she's just making her way. It's like, no, you need to be straightforward with her, because she's an adult and she's in this military organization, and she made major mistakes. So being rude is just like, that's a standard. Ahsoka's being nice to Sabine, if anything.
All these negative emotions come to light when she is fighting Balin, and since she lost and is on the brink of death, she is pondering giving up. If her legacy is one of death and destruction, and all she can offer her future Padawan is how to be a soldier, then why bother to keep fighting? Anakin is here to remind her that she is more than just Anakin's Padawan.
I like how he says Anakin is here. Like, what? what do you mean Anakin is here? Is that the so you're saying that's the ghost of Anakin? The ghost of Anakin turned evil to try to teach her a lesson, even though we've already seen him as a good guy. Or this is the Anakin that's in Ahsoka's head, or so, you see what I mean? Where it's just, this deep analysis comes up with so many problems, just in reality and continuity. It's like these deep discussions about what they're going through. These are, of course, fine to have, but they all fall apart no matter which way you slice it, because it's built on like burning straw, so it's hard to get past.
She showed empathy during times of war. She was never proud of all the killing and battles she won, and most importantly, just because her master turned to evil, that does not mean that is the same fate for her. By choosing to live, she needs to come to terms with all of this and go back to actually living life.
I like how she can just choose whether or not she's gonna drown. And it's just like, oh, do you want to die? It's like, no, I don't really feel like it. Okay, well, you can just not drown, even though you're underwater and been submerged for hours, possibly. Maybe even a day. That's fine. It's okay. Ahsoka, we would never disrespect you. You are the apex Star Wars. Come on.
A life about connection. So she wakes up reborn, and after learning that Sabine went with Balin and company to the Eye of Sion, she decides to take a risk and trust in the space whales to get her to Peridia as well.
Trust the space whales. It's so funny. That's like one of those sentences where you say it and then you play it back to yourself and you're like, oh my god, I just said that. That's a sentence I just said. I can't believe I just said that she trusts in the space whales. And I'm not on drugs or anything. I said that while lucid and sober. That's wild.
On paper, this is a really nice arc. I love the idea of the show exploring how it must feel to be a part of such a complicated legacy. So what's the problem? Pretty much everything that I've said in the video up to this point. This show has not even remotely done the legwork to set up this arc. Ahsoka's insecurities about Anakin are never mentioned or hinted at. Her fears about continuing on a legacy of destruction is not remotely hinted at all in the series. And frankly, Ahsoka pondering giving up on life because of all of this is, you guessed, not hinted at all in this series.
Not to mention, you still have to make the argument for why she would even be insecure about it before even starting to hint it and explore it. Because I could totally see the argument that Ahsoka, from what we've seen of her, shouldn't be insecure about this anymore. That what she's been through and how she left Anakin and everything, she would actually be like the opposite, where it's like, okay, it's not, I'm more than just Anakin's Padawan. I am my own Force user. I'm my own Jedi, and I will not let that stain me. And she would already like have that that mindset, that mentality. I could totally see someone arguing that she would, from what we've seen of her. So it's not exactly set in stone. Just yeah, she would be insecure about this. It's like maybe not, maybe not.
When you have a standard character arc, here is the logical flow of that arc. The character has a flaw. We learn why the character has a flaw. Narratively, this is referred to as the ghost that plagues the character's past. Usually at the midpoint of the story or at the end of the second act, that flaw causes something bad to happen to the character. The character then learns from the failure stemming from the flaw, and then they change, having learned a valuable lesson. This new changed character is then able to accomplish his or her goal because they overcame their flaw. This is the most basic way to write a character arc.
If any other writer heard this in reference to their work, they would just immediately be like, go fuck yourself. You're really going to explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old how character arc works? But of course, little soy Dave would probably be like, yeah, but I think I did that though. I think that's an interesting interpretation you have though. I think that's it can be implemented, but I kind of see that in Ahsoka, you know? This is not like a Dave Filoni impression. I don't remember what he sounds like. I don't watch any interviews with him because they sicken me to my core. I like to be nice and safe with George Lucas interviews. They're much more cathartic, trust me.
Let's now look at Ahsoka. Ahsoka begins the series flawed. So far, so good. Do we know why she has a flaw? No, at least not yet.
Again, what is her flaw? She's rude? That's a flaw, I guess? I mean, when you're in like deadly situations, like having robots nuke in front of you, and you're in possession of a device that holds the entire galaxy at stake, and I'd be a little firm if I was her. I mean, what other flaws is he referring to? Is that she like speaks like she has like a mental handicap? She can't get more than like a few words out before just pausing and looking at Sabine. Like she wants to, I don't know. Maybe that's what he's referring to. I would agree, but I think that's more of a direction and acting problem than actual character in the story problem. Just the portrayal.
At the midway point of the story, something bad happened to Ahsoka. That's good. Was this bad event caused by her flaw? Not that I'm aware of. It appears she just lost a fight. So after the low point of the series, when we learn why the character has a flaw, it doesn't help that we learn why the character has a flaw in the most vague way possible. But hey, at least we learned something.
Well, thank God Goldman's glass half full kind of guy, because otherwise he'd probably hate this show. He's always like, oh, well, it was bad, but, I mean, at least it wasn't awful. And it's just that's it. Which, of course, it was awful. That's, if you're talking about any aspect of Ahsoka, and you just have a gun to your head, and the guy's like, hey, was this part of Ahsoka kind of bad, or pretty bad, or just straight up terrible? Always go for the latter. Save your life, trust me.
Ahsoka is now a changed woman. Is she able to accomplish her goals and win in the end because of her change? I guess so. I'll give the writers this and say the reason Sabine was able to use the Force in the end was because of Ahsoka's affirmation in the beginning of the last episode.
Oh, okay. So someone who's never had Force abilities all their life and has never shown proficiency in it is okay to do it just because Ahsoka gave her a few nice words. Are we forgetting that the Force is something that took Jedi in the Republic days, like years of training from when they were like toddlers to full-grown adults, and even then they didn't have full mastery of it, just a better understanding than most people. But nice talking to, that'll work. That's the Disney way. Just a nice pep talk. You can do it with the power of teamwork.
And that is Ahsoka's story in Season 1. This is just not a compelling way to tell a character arc. How could the previous episodes have been different to make this arc feel more organic? I already suggested some ideas that I won't repeat, but I do have a new idea. It's a change to Episode 4. In Episode 4, Ahsoka loses to Baylan, gets thrown off the cliff, and then Sabine gives the map to Baylan. What if we change the order up a bit? Say Ahsoka is fighting Baylan. Baylan defeats her, but she is not thrown off the cliff. Maybe she just gets injured where she is pretty much incapacitated. Kinda like Anakin and Obi-Wan were in Attack of the Clones. So Sabine shows up and Baylan is trying to convince her to give him the map. If Baylan kills Ahsoka or throws her off the ledge, then Sabine will destroy the map. So Sabine is still pondering what she should do. The difference here is that Ahsoka is there to see this interaction. She is begging Sabine to destroy the map and to forfeit their lives for the greater good. But Sabine still gives the map to Baylan anyway. Ahsoka is devastated to see this. Baylan then tosses her off a cliff because she is no longer needed. And then Baylan takes Sabine away. The next episode begins with Ahsoka on her deathbed where she talks to Anakin. What does this change accomplish?
Fuck all. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it might change a little bit, but I mean, let's remember, the main thing he's trying to go for is Ahsoka seeing Sabine's action, but later on, a few episodes down the line, when Sabine and Ahsoka resolve, quote unquote, this whole thing, she basically just gets like a light, like, you shouldn't have done that. Or, wait, no, I don't think that's even it. It's like, you made the choice that was best for you, or some stupid, something dumb like that. So, unless he's saying that this, Ahsoka actually seeing it in person would make her more mad about it. But that's not even guaranteed. What you would really be saying is, Ahsoka sees, it would make it stupider that Ahsoka actually sees in person Sabine betraying her, and by extension everyone she loves and cares about, and then forgiving her later on the same way anyway, or forgiving her right then, the same episode or the episode after. That would just make it even more, it wouldn't make it more dumb, it would just make it look more dumb. As dumb as it is, it would be more transparent. So, maybe not quite. But the other outcome, as in making Ahsoka have that regret that goes into the next episode, possibly. It could be. But this would, again, require a full series rewrite, not just this scene. You have to start rewriting everything bottom up, and maybe this will start to work.
For one, if framed in the right context, Ahsoka can see Sabine give Baylan the map as a fault of her bad training.
You need training to know not to give the MacGuffin to the bad guy? Really?
If Sabine is that desperate to where she needs to risk the galaxy to be with someone she considers family, then that means she must not consider Ahsoka family, which Ahsoka can see as her fault because she was not a good master. The second thing this accomplishes is that the devastating situation is what causes Ahsoka to ponder giving up. From her perspective, the map is destroyed, Baylan is on his way to Thrawn, and there is nothing she can do. Might as well quit.
Well, now look who's ignoring previous character establishment. I mean, remember that Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan, and when in the Clone Wars, especially, I remember this was like one of the whole things where when a situation would get tough and the other Jedi or the clones would be like, "This isn't possible," and Ahsoka would look to Anakin and he would say, "Nope, there's another way." That's like one of the main things she learned from him. They're like, "Oh, there's no giving up. There's always a way. There's no wall that you can't get through or get across or get over to do the right thing." So the whole thing about her giving up, especially not now, it's one of the defining elements that she learned from Anakin. That would have been the correct thing for Anakin to teach her. It's like, remember the whole thing I taught you about not giving up when the going gets rough? What do I know?
In the current show, Ahsoka doesn't know what happened until after her character arc, so there was nothing that sparked her questioning if she wanted to give up. While this whole thing with Anakin is happening, as far as she knows, the fight is very much alive and she needs to go back there. With my changes, she has a reason to give up. Anakin will then teach her to keep fighting, then she will get creative and think about the whales as a mean to find Sabine and Ezra. Everything that the original show accomplished is still intact.
Well, it wasn't an accomplishment if it doesn't work. Tried to accomplish, I think, is the phrase you were looking for. You gotta be more honest, man. And so you're criticizing the show. It's a good job, but you can't say, "Oh, well, good at these things," but just say, "Oh, yeah, what the show failed to do, my changes would rectify." That's what you gotta say.
But my version gives Ahsoka a far more effective character arc. Now, why did Dave struggle so much with this arc?
Because he can't write to save his fucking life.
Or at least presenting it in a way that isn't so confusing. This may sound a little harsh, but after thinking about it for a year, it's probably the truth. During the writing of the show, Dave most likely thought about having a scene with Anakin in it, and then tried to tie a potential character arc with Ahsoka into that scene. What he should have done is have the character arc first, and then think about Anakin as a way to accomplish that arc.
Or just don't use Anakin at all, or to a much smaller degree than you did. You don't even have to show him at all. You can just have references to him that Ahsoka uses in her helping to train Sabine. She doesn't even have to use Anakin's name. She can just see, like, "my master," or the man who taught me said, stuff like that. You don't even have to have this, like, stupid... I hate the whole show, but I hate episode 5 so much. It's so unnecessary and causes so many problems.
Dave probably wanted to show Anakin with a red lightsaber, show a young Ahsoka, and show the Siege of Mandalore so badly. Fan service came first here, and that is not a great way to approach a story.
And ain't that the gosh darn truth?
The last thing that needs to be discussed before moving on is the damn Purrgil. Can you guess what I'm gonna say? You should really be able to guess because I'm gonna be making the same point again for like the 5th time. A prologue of the ending of Rebels makes this scene so much better.
And can you guess what I'm gonna say? No, it does not. It would only serve to make the scene more boring because we already saw them in the beginning of the show. But of course, the only plus for people who care, I guess, is that this is the first time we're seeing the whales in their former glory or all that. Even though we saw them in the space chase scene, kind of. That's fine, whatever.
If you're a new viewer, you may wonder what on earth prompted Ahsoka to think that entering the mouth of the whales would get her to Peridia. But if we saw the ending of Rebels and we saw the whales take Ezra and Thrawn away, then Ahsoka can reference this and use this as what sparked her line of thinking.
Her line of thinking, that knowing that Thrawn and Ezra were taken into hyperspace by the whales, that she would be able to go inside one of them, just a random pod. She doesn't know if these ones are related to those ones, and that they would be willing to hyperspace her, and that they would take her to the exact same spot that they took Thrawn. I think I already said this. It's so stupid. It doesn't this whole like putting this thing at the beginning, just like, oh, this is how it happened. This wouldn't make their decisions in the show make more sense. It would give us a little more context to what happened, but it wouldn't help the characters' decisions make more sense. That just wouldn't be how it works.
Just before this happens, Hera tells Jason and thus the audience what happened to Ezra and what role the whales played.
Oh yeah, remember when Hera brought her son along on a deadly mission that involved potential Sith and going into like what could have been a battle zone with the Sith and Empire people? That was a smart decision on her part. I guess she's a little naive. She doesn't have much experience in war or anything, so she wouldn't know not to bring her son to a battle zone.
Remember, showing is better than telling. Instead of having Hera tell the audience, why not show the audience in the prologue of the series? I think this is the last time I'm gonna bring up this point, but I can't promise you that. Episode 5 had a lot of fun moments that made me smile as a fan, but the way it approached the character arc of Ahsoka was a confusing and unorganized mess.
I wish you would just say what he's like, these fun moments that he's described, because I think what the truth would be, I enjoyed all the shameless references and fan service that was lazily done and not incorporated into the story correctly. If you said that, it would kind of make it a little awkward, so he's just gonna say, oh, there were fun moments I enjoyed, but overall, it just wasn't that good. So you can be honest, man. It's okay to, like, I guess for lack of a better term, superficial stuff. But that doesn't mean you have to say it's good.
Episode 6 is a much slower episode. It doesn't have the attempted character arc of Episode 5 or the intensity of Episode 4, but here we are reintroduced to Thrawn and Ezra. To touch on Thrawn first, his introduction was great.
No, it was cringe and stupid. And I'll explain why. It was because they were presenting Thrawn as you would from a real-world perspective. They weren't presenting him as he would be in universe, which is a commander who has been stranded for years and is just a pragmatic survivor. He wouldn't be this like presenting him with like the grand music and everything as this like god deity figure. That's just silly. That's just playing on people who know who he is. Trying to say that, oh, you know what's coming, don't you? You're feeling it now. You've been waiting. Here's Thrawn. But that's just like isn't that so lame? Like, wouldn't it have been much cooler if he had like a subtle introduction and he did something like really like strategically or intellectually like impressive as like his like introduction to this show? That'd be awesome. I'd way prefer that.
This show has had an issue with treating important events as important, but this is not one of those examples. Since the opening crawl, we were told the goal of the enemy is to find Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now that they have found him, the scene slowly but intensely builds up to his reveal. And I gotta say, I love his first line of dialogue.
What was first just a dream has become a frightening reality for those who may oppose us.
I mean, I just find that so interesting, especially the word dream, because it's like, Thrawn, what were you doing? Were you just hoping and praying that the witch's magic would somehow call someone to come rescue you years later, and that was your only plan? It's like you didn't use your Star Destroyer to like maybe try to build something in this galaxy? Because that's like another waste opportunity. We didn't even see this new galaxy at all. Barely the planet we were on, and definitely not anywhere else in any other place in space. It's like, I don't believe that Thrawn would have stayed there waiting on magic to come save him. No, he would just take initiative. I mean, I'm talking about like real Thrawn, not, Skinwalker Thrawn, but even like just a smart, normal person would, take initiative and say, okay, I have a starship, or a capital ship, really. I think that's his capital ship, Star Destroyer, and he would take it and use the resources of this new galaxy to build a new fleet, maybe build new followers. You have to question, that'd be interesting if Thrawn was like, maybe I don't even want to go back to my universe, or galaxy, because I built something here. That would be interesting. Maybe Ezra thinks the same way, like he had a family, they started there, something for character, something for interesting conflict.
The episode doesn't show Thrawn doing much, so we'll touch more on Thrawn when he actually does stuff. I mentioned this before when discussing episode 4, but it's time to bring it up here. Shin is continuing to ask Baylan questions about this place. What does he hope to find in this wasteland? What is this power that he seeks? What answers do we get from Baylan? More vague comments about power and starting anew. We want scenes between Baylan and Shin.
Again, just speak for yourself, man. They were interesting maybe, but I mean, come on. I doubt the average Ahsoka watcher was that interested in Shin and Baylan. They probably don't even remember their names, if I'm being honest here.
These are two new characters. Them being Dark Jedi is a new concept to the Star Wars canon, so scenes where the two talk to each other to express feelings and motivations is important. Most of the scenes between these two work really well. Even though we still don't know what exactly Baylan was looking for, his personality and his relationship with Shin has certainly developed nicely.
Well, look, dude, I'm happy to hear that good acting misguided you onto what the scene was, but the reality is that Filoni didn't have a plan, and probably still doesn't, for what to do with them. I mean, even unfortunately after Ray Stevenson passed away, if they continued with those characters, that he had no idea. He was just hoping that people like you would find it interesting, so he would delay in having to actually come up with a story for them. I'm convinced he doesn't know what to do with the Mortis stuff or any of the Dark Jedi Force. It's just he has just like vague concepts of what would be cool, but he just hasn't thought about it deeply enough at all. Neither is Jon Favreau.
Now, the part of these scenes that I struggle with are that Baylan has no reason to keep his motivations a secret from Shin. Shin is his apprentice. He constantly talks about how he trained her to be something more than a Jedi. But whenever Shin has any questions, all she gets are vague answers from Baylan. Why is Baylan not telling her about the Mortis gods? Why is he not telling her what he plans to do with this power he seeks? Why does he not tell her what it means when he says, in order to create, we must first destroy?
Because the character can have more knowledge than the person writing them, unfortunately.
I know the reason why. Because the audience is watching. Filoni and the writers don't want the audience to know it yet, so they can keep us intrigued week to week.
Okay, first I like how he says Filoni and the writers, like there's more people responsible, and it's all him, dude. This was his baby, this was his project, his own solo show. He takes responsibility. And two, like, what is the interest in the Mortis stuff? Like, what is, even for people, so for people that don't know what it is, they're just gonna be like, oh, okay, there's a weird statue, I'm not really sure, so I guess maybe. But like, for people that do know what it is, it's like, what is the connection there? Yeah, they're Force gods who are like supposed to be manifestations of each aspect of the Force, light and dark, and the Father that binds them both, or whatever it was. It's like, what meaning does that have to Baylan yet? Like, I'm sure people theorize about it. I'm not sure. I don't find it interesting just because I don't understand what the connection is. I'd have to have that explored a little more. But honestly, with Dave, I really don't want to. I don't want it to be.
Or in this specific case, from season to season. This situation is akin to the Holdo situation in The Last Jedi. Why Holdo never told Poe the plan to escape to the secret base is because the audience needed to be left in the dark so there could be a good plot twist. Now, what's a little more annoying about the Poe situation is that there is an obvious reason not to tell Poe. All Holdo had to say was, last time you were told the plan, you disobeyed orders and got dozens of people killed.
Why do people still say that? How is that a valid reason? Oh, you got people killed. Poe saved the entire Resistance from being destroyed. Like, do you remember that? They all would have been dead if not for Poe's maneuver. So it saved hundreds of lives. And it's like, even if he did it, how is that a valid reason not to tell him the plan? It's like, okay, so your rash actions, quote unquote, got a bunch of people killed, but now we're all gonna die. And you're going to not tell me and make me even more concerned, which is probably going to make me do something rash. Instead of sedating me by telling me we have a plan to save us. So it doesn't even... The Last Jedi is just terrible, folks. It's not... It's like I said at the beginning, you do not want to be caught on the hill of dying, needing a life pack. Just like, oh, I gotta defend the Last Jedi. And it's like, no, come on, just save yourself. That is not the path to the light side, my good friend.
Why would I tell you the plan and risk you trying to sabotage it? There's a lot more details about The Last Jedi I'm not going to get into right now.
Yeah, because it's shit, and there's no point in trying to defend it. You'll never win. It's not a good movie. It's a terrible movie. It's like universally agreed upon at this point. I don't understand why there's still people trying to fight it. So it's a losing battle all the way.
But Holdo could have at least made it a bit more clear than her vague comments about Poe being reckless. In Ahsoka, if you want scenes between Shin and Baylan and you don't want the audience to find out what Baylan's plans are, then at least give us a good reason why Baylan isn't telling Shin anything. Maybe Baylan is worried that Ahsoka will find out the plan, and if Shin is captured, she could reveal that information under interrogation. That's not a bad reason. Maybe Baylan himself doesn't know what he's looking for. Maybe all he heard was that a great power resides out here, and since it is calling to him, he owes it to himself to find out what it is. Another very serviceable reason. These are all minor changes that would go a long way in not frustrating the viewers.
Yeah, or just cut the stupid Mortis stuff entirely and just have Shin and Baylan's focus be on why they're not Jedi, and just like have it be a more philosophical talk between the two of them. That would be way more interesting than trying to hide this forced journey stuff. That's just, come on. That's just not, even if it was written well, this is not the, maybe it could be super interesting, but like for the general audience of Ahsoka, I don't even think that's what the general Star Wars fans were looking for. They don't need the more like vague Force stuff, just more about the dichotomy between the Sith and Jedi and these people who fall in between it. That's the interesting stuff. Focus on that.
Now, moving on from Baylan and Shin, let's talk about Sabine finding Ezra. This episode highlights one of Filoni's biggest struggles as a writer. This episode has scenes that develop the plot. Great. This episode has scenes that develop the characters. Great. But
I mean, develop's an interesting word, but I continue.
Filoni appears incapable of writing scenes that develop both the plot and the characters at the same time. And not every scene needs to develop both at the same time, but it would be nice if it happened at least once. This episode is just plot, a little character, plot, a little character.
I think that before attempting to merge together the plot and the character in the same scene, I think he should just focus on making each one good respectively first, and then we can go on to stage 2, which is interweaving them correctly. That's later down the line after writing 101.
In the scene where Sabine fights the bandits, we see that she's resourceful and can fight, something we already knew. Sabine then finds the turtle people, and we learn that Sabine is kind, something we already knew.
I love all the names. The space whales, the turtle people. It's like a Wonder Pets episode.
When you watch this episode for the first time, the episode works because you're intrigued with what Sabine will discover about this place. Will she find Ezra? What kind of life is on this planet? What else is on this planet? What do these turtle people know? What do they not know? Your curiosity is keeping us engaged.
What? Your curiosity is keeping us engaged? I don't... was that a mistake? I'm sure he didn't mean to say that. But like, also, just speak for yourself. Stop saying just say, yeah, my curiosity was keeping me engaged with all these aspects, even though it wasn't quite connecting correctly. It's like, don't say you. You don't know me. You don't know me, bro.
But rewatch value is also important. Rewatching this episode, it's all really slow because there is nothing of note going on. Sure, the scene where she finds the turtle people is cute. Sure, the scene where she talks to the horse dog thing is cute, but
what does cute animals have to do with anything, dude? Who cares? I'm not a 12-year-old girl, and cute animals, I can just go watch My Little Pony.
from the moment Sabine leaves Thrawn's palace or whatever, I'm just waiting for the part where she finds Ezra because that's actually a good scene. This episode could have done a much better job of building up to the moment where Sabine finds Ezra.
I mean, build up wouldn't matter because it's not even triumphant or anything. They just get there and they're like, hey. It's like the Spider-Verse, hey. And they're just like, oh, they do a little hug. But they should be like, neither one of them knew if they were each other. They're acting like they just saw each other after like summer break. But neither one knew if the other was alive for was it almost a decade at this point? That's insane. They should be like over. There should be bawling and tears, and like maybe Sabine would even like scream or something like that. But no. So it would have been even more awkward if they've like had like triumphant music and they're building up to it, and then the same scene happened, and the music cuts. That would have been kind of funny, I guess. It's like so anticlimactic.
But as you guessed, the moment she does find Ezra was sweet. You know, I always try to be super analytical here and always have my professor hat on, but even I can just enjoy a moment that's meant to serve the fans.
So if it's meant to serve the fans, then it doesn't have to be well thought out or well executed. It just doesn't. It doesn't have to be good. If there was good intentions. It was meant to serve the fans. It didn't reach that purpose. Not for me, at least. Happy it did for someone.
Once in a while. Would the scene have been better with my suggested prologue? Absolutely, but the scene still works. Now I will say this, the scene and subsequently the next episode does have a great setup to something that wasn't paid off, or at least hasn't been paid off yet. Ezra in this episode and the next episode repeatedly asks Sabine, how did you get here? How did you find me? The reason Sabine doesn't tell Ezra is because she knows he wouldn't approve of her risking the galaxy to find him.
Yeah, but he should be like thinking that immediately. Just by the like notion of her being here, she'd be like, oh wait, if you got here, that probably means Thrawn can get back, and that just undoes my entire sacrifice. And when he does finally find that out, he should, like making that conclusion, when he does find out, he should be insanely upset. Like if not like, maybe not attacking her, but he should be very confrontational about that. That was the whole point. Like, imagine all he suffered living on this planet in light of the sacrifice. But he told himself, hey, I did the right thing. I saved the galaxy, and no one will have to deal with the scorn of Thrawn. And now all that just is out the window now. He should be really mad about that.
I love how Thrawn emphasizes this point. She risked the fate of the galaxy to find her friend. Remember, actions should have consequences.
But they won't, unfortunately. Sabine will never... I guarantee Sabine will never have to face the true consequences for everything wrong she did this season. I mean, it is just astronomical, the amount of people that have died and are going to die, the amount of mistakes that were made, the risk that she took. Just to get like one little barely talking down from Ahsoka, and Ezra just not even confronting her at all. It's just insane.
How interesting would it be if Sabine told Ezra and he was pissed? That would make for a great character dynamic, but it never happens. Now it can still happen, but just like with almost everything else in the show, we'll just have to wait and see in season 2.
No, it's too late. If Ezra gets pissed at her in season 2, it won't make sense. It should have happened earlier if it was going to happen. It's just a mistake on their part. Filoni messed up. He actually didn't think that Ezra would be mad at her for this, which is insane. It's kind of embarrassing. He wrote these are his. He of all people should know this is his stuff. He should know how Ezra would react to this sort of thing. He has all the groundwork for it, but he just doesn't do it because he's stupid. Stupid.
Episode 6 is a much slower episode, but it had some highlights that I certainly enjoyed. The 7th episode opens with the conclusion to the Hera insubordination arc, and this arc is terrible. Let's summarize it, shall we? Hera is investigating the return of Thrawn. After finding evidence, she asks the New Republic for help. The New Republic denies her because they don't trust her for some reason. Hera then proceeds to go behind the New Republic's back anyway and get her own squadron of fighters to assist Ahsoka. This gets her in trouble where she may get court-martialed. During her trial, she's about to be disciplined, then 3PO shows up and tells the senators Leia approved this mission the whole time.
It's kind of baffling that, because I have a feeling I know what his criticism is going to be of it, because it is really stupid. But it's kind of baffling that he can see this and understand really well, at least I'm guessing, why this is terrible and doesn't make any sense at all and is really lazy. But then just for some of that other stuff, he just sees right past it. I don't know. There weren't enough cute animals in this scene, I guess.
Hera leaves the trial unscathed and her rank as general remains intact. So why does this arc suck? Because as far as I'm aware, none of this will have any lasting consequence. In episode 3, I spoke about the world building implications this arc has, especially when it comes to the fall of the New Republic in The Force Awakens. This is cool and all, but it can't be the sole reason for the existence of this arc. There needs to be some heavy character implications for Hera or heavy implications for the plot.
Wait, what? Wait, is he saying that this is what this scene was supposed to be implying is why the New Republic falls in The Force Awakens? It's because Starkiller Base blew up the core worlds that they were based on, so they all got blown up and died. Unless you're talking about before, when Leia starts the Resistance, I guess, and goes off away from the New Republic, but that's like its own can of worms. That just doesn't... This doesn't help justify why that makes sense. Mostly because this scene doesn't make sense. And I mean, the idea that the New Republic wouldn't... I already explained all this. Is that the New Republic wouldn't act this way. It's just not their character.
Now maybe somehow they can make this relevant in Season 2, but I highly doubt that. What do I say in almost every video of mine? Characters must suffer the consequences of their actions.
Okay, I assume he just means, like, protagonists. Because that'd be pretty insane to say that every character has to suffer the consequences of their actions. That's just not how it works. It's not... This guy's idea of storytelling just baffles me. It actually baffles me. I don't understand how he comes to these conclusions about what things should be. A good character arc has to have this. A good narrative has to... Like, they have to suffer the consequences. It's all this random stuff. It's like... Again, generally, it's that word is your friend. It's a very good tool to use.
This is what allows stories to have stakes that we can get invested in. With Hera, whether we agree with her reasoning or not, she did disobey a direct order. She did go against the military to pursue what she thought was right. What is the realistic consequence of this? That she would be disciplined. Come the trial in episode 7, how interesting would it have been if Hera was actually court-martialed? Maybe down the road, the lack of Hera's presence could leave the New Republic unprepared to handle an attack of some kind.
Oh no, guys. We lost Hera. What are we gonna do? We have no defenses now. It was all... We were counting on you, Hera. Why'd you have to die? No!
But instead of getting anything remotely interesting, we need Hera to be bailed out by Leia because why? They don't want Hera to be court-martialed? Wasted opportunity. Now, most of the episode still takes place on Peridia, and kinda like the last episode, a lot of it here is really slow as well. So we have Sabine and Ezra chatting, which I do like, especially since Sabine is catching Ezra up on what he had missed.
I like how... that Hera not getting court-martialed... It's like, oh man, that was such a missed opportunity to do something interesting. But Sabine and Ezra just like talking gets an automatic, yeah, I like that. Even though their conversation is dumb because they danced around the fact that Sabine, basically screwed everything. Screwed the pooch, if you will. It's just interesting.
This is going to be a nitpick, but as a major Rebels fan, this pissed me off. I cannot believe for the life of me that Sabine didn't tell Ezra that Kanan and Hera had a child together. If I had to rank the most important events that Ezra missed while he was gone by how important it would be for him, number 1 would be the fall of the Empire, and number 2 would be that his former master and his mother figure had a child together who can use the Force.
Well, what are you freaking out for, dude? We'll find out in season 2, right? Well, that'll be where all the answers come in, just like Filoni promised. And Master Filoni never gives up on his promises.
Whenever season 2 happens, this better be addressed or I'll throw a fit.
I swear I didn't see this video before. I'm naturally that prophetic.
But moving on to more serious critiques.
Oh, and by the way he was wrong about his own criticism. That was not a nitpick. The idea that Ezra was not, like, immediately curious about what had happened with the fall of the Empire and everything, because he left while the war was still going on. So, like, his first question would be, like, is everyone all right? Did they all die in the war, or what's going on? So it's not a nitpick. It's an actual, it's just a blatant error. It's a flaw. So, but at least he at least he defined his criticism. That's a good start.
During this conversation, Sabine continues to not give Ezra any answers. In the last episode, it was okay, but if I was Ezra here, I would be getting pissed off. What happened to Ahsoka? It's complicated. How did you find me? It's complicated. If I was missing for 10 years and then I was found, you bet your ass I would want to know how I was found, especially if the person who found me was acting suspicious about it. Now, if this was paid off at some point, I could forgive Sabine's vagueness, but it did not pay off, so I can't forgive it.
How would have it been paid off later? Where Sabine, what would it be like where Sabine just tells Ezra, like, hey, sorry, I was going to tell you, but the writer wouldn't let me, so it wasn't possible. Just apologies. There's another way they could tie that up in a way that resolves it. It's just, her vagueness is only because Filoni wants to delay this reaction. It's the only reason. There's no other reasonable explanation.
A lot of this episode is just action where Ezra and Sabine are fighting bandits. Is there anything new we learn about either character? No. Do we ever get some cool payoff to what Ezra's been up to for the last 10 years? Not really. He says the Force is now his ally and that he doesn't need a weapon to fight. That could be really cool, but all he does is push people around, and then he picks up a blaster anyway.
Oh god, I forgot about that. There's like so many things wrong with this show that just something like Ezra's weird, I'm not going to use a weapon, and then immediately proceeding to use a weapon. That's just, it's on number like 276 on the list of things wrong with this show, so I just totally blanked it. But yeah, that was hilarious. It's like, no, the Force is my ally, which I'll use to shove people into the wall and then use their own blasters against them. Because you see, I got their blasters with the Force, so really, I was telling the truth from a certain point of view. This is great.
Nothing more exciting than that. Ahsoka and Huyang arrive on the planet, and there are moments here I did like. Even though the arc she went on was rushed, at least there is a visible difference between who Ahsoka is now and who she was before. She's making jokes with Huyang, which were quite funny.
Okay, whatever. That's just like, if you say so, man. It's just like the cute space turtles where it's like, okay, I guess a good thing that someone liked it.
Instead of killing Shin on the spot, she offers to spare her, and when she sees Sabine, the first thing she does is smile. We even get to see her laughing, something I could never have imagined Ahsoka doing in the first half of the season.
What reason do they have to be happy? For all they know, she's stranded with these people on this distant planet in this distant galaxy, and they have no way to stop the bad guys from getting back to their home and destroying it. She all she knows at this point is that Sabine betrayed her and caused this whole thing to happen, and she doesn't have any information on Ezra, so she just hugs him without being like, holy shit, Ezra, I haven't seen you for a decade. Are you okay? What happened to you? It's like none of that. It's, oh, it's a good thing she's happy now. And it's like, no, but it doesn't make sense. That's the problem. We're not mad because she's happy now.
Now, episode 7 is really part 1 of a 2-part finale. So instead of just addressing Thrawn's strategy in this episode specifically, let's move on to the finale and see how it all ties together.
Oh, okay. Good luck with that. I just can't wait. I just know he's going to be like, wow, it's so, okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but if he goes like, oh yeah, it's so genius how Thrawn was playing them all along, just like he did in Rebels, I'm going to lose it.
The finale features our characters trying to escape from Peridia. Where this episode got the most slack was due to Thrawn's plan.
Well, no, it was his lack of one that got a lot of flack, because he didn't actually have a plan. He was just constantly changing his mind, and I think coping was the big thing people called him out for, because he would lose like drastically in a situation and just be like, oh well, glass half full. There were some good things that happened here. He was like doing the whole politician thing where he's like, Senator, why were you failing to get the gas prices down in our county? It's like, well, let's look at the positive here. You don't have to emit as much carbons from your car because you're not driving as much. I don't know, something stupid like that. That was basically the Thrawn cope.
In episode 7, Thrawn learned that Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan. This meant that he had to adjust his plan accordingly.
Well, what does that have to do with anything? What was wrong with Thrawn's so-called plan that was incompatible because Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan? Like, what does that even mean? Literally, all Thrawn had to do was, like, wait in his starship in orbit away from all the people that were on the ground and couldn't do anything because their ship was damaged, and literally just go and leave them behind. That's all he had to do. If Anakin was in Ahsoka's position, there'd be nothing he could do either. They only win because of just insanity, because Thrawn's, like, loading his little boxes onto his ship and takes so long and then doesn't... I hate it. It makes me so angry just thinking about the show.
In simplest terms, his plan was to remove any sort of randomness. He knows the Jedi. He ended up in this different galaxy because a Jedi did something completely random and summoned space whales. Thrawn will never underestimate a Jedi again.
Wait, but you just switched it. You said that it was because he learned that Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan. But now you're saying he's just being cautious because he's wary of Jedi because of what happened to him. It's like, it's not... Which one is it? Is it both? Is it either or? Which one?
By taking out all randomness from future events, that means he can control all variables and escape easily. It should be noted that Thrawn's plan is not to kill Ahsoka, Sabine, or Ezra. That would be nice for him, but that is not his plan. His plan is simply to escape and leave the others behind.
Okay, then why did he bother shooting at them with the Star Destroyer when they were riding the horses up to the base of the fortress? Why didn't he just let them do that and leave? Or why did he send the zombie stormtroopers after him? Or why did she make Morgan Elsbeth stay back to fight them? If he didn't want them to die or didn't care about killing them, why did he bother doing any of these things? They only slowed him down and risked one of them catching up to them, which he did. And God knows how Ezra got off the Star Destroyer without getting caught. I don't know. Maybe the stormtroopers weren't, like, in material reality. Filoni forgot to write them in. I don't know. Or maybe the rest of them were the zombies that died. I don't know. No one knows.
So by doing this, he plans to do everything he can to stall the Jedi. When Thrawn learns that Ahsoka has arrived in the system, he sends some of his forces to go attack Sabine and Ezra. Not because he thinks his forces can defeat Sabine and Ezra, but because he just needs to stall them.
Again, why? He has a starship. All they have is Ahsoka's stupid ship thing. But he has a Star Destroyer. He doesn't need to stall them. He's only stalling himself. He's wasting resources and time organizing these forces to go and fight them when he could just be using all those people to help move the stuff he needs to onto a Star Destroyer and then fuck off. That's all he needs to do. So it's opposite. He's stalling for no reason. He doesn't need to stall them. They have no transportation, and they're possibly dozens of miles away. So it's just pointless.
And by sending his forces there, Ahsoka will feel compelled to help them instead of going straight for Thrawn. After that first attack, Thrawn sends another attack to try to disable Ahsoka's ship. This works, but Ahsoka and company still make their way up to the top of this tower. Thrawn then sends Morgan and the zombie troopers to stall them again. This ends up working enough to where Ezra is the only one who manages to get on board. Despite a last-second effort to catch Thrawn is able to escape before Ahsoka and Sabine can reach him, and his entire plan was a success.
Oh, God. I can't with it. It wasn't that his plan was a success, because his plan was just to try a bunch of random stuff. Ironically, he just said he was trying to stop random, but whatever. His plan didn't succeed. It almost failed because of him. There was no plan required. All he had to do was do the normal person thing and just leave in his Star Destroyer. That's all he had to do. He didn't even have to bother with them. But because of his stupid decisions to keep focusing time and resources on stopping them, he almost lost. He would have been better off if he had just, like, not done anything. It's like the only way to win is not to play here. It's just like just don't even worry about them, Thrawn. You're fine. You forget you can just go to space in your Star Destroyer and leave. Come on, bud. You were great once. You were a great tactician, but I guess maybe the dementia's catching up to him.
What do I think of this plan? On paper, I really like it. There's something refreshing about seeing one of these villains not underestimate our main characters. In Star Wars, this happens time and time again, so I appreciated something different here.
Okay, no, I'm done. I give up. You are actually just... This is the most retarded thing I've ever heard. Oh, it was different and he didn't underestimate... No, he overestimated them because we needed conflict to happen when if anything in this stupid fucking show made sense, he would have just left them alone. That's what happened. And it pisses me off so much that Dave is able to trick so many people into thinking he can write smart characters because, ooh, they say things really slowly and they say like things are like, ooh, in underestimating our opponent, we are actually overrated. Stupid stuff like that. It's like, it's more annoying than just like your average bad writer who just like write stuff that's like just obviously terrible. It's like Filoni's stuff is just more like pretentiously bad. And I think that's what really bugs me about it the most. And then people like this write their video essays and it's like, wow, it was so smart. It's finally a smart villain, unlike what we've been getting in most Star Wars. It's just gotta check myself here. We still got a little bit ways to go, but that makes me so mad.
Where I struggle a bit with Thrawn's plan is that Thrawn is only as smart as the writers. If you're writing a character that's supposed to be brilliant, then you really need to go the extra mile to make sure that all your bases are covered. Because if you tell the audience this character is a genius, but then they do stupid things, that makes you as a writer look bad.
Whoa, who are you? Are you the twin brother of Mr. Goldman with the reasonable smart take? Where it's like, oh yeah, obviously a character is only as smart as the person writing them, and the writer's Dave Filoni, so that, I guess that explains Thrawn. But seriously, how could you say that after everything you just went through? It's like, oh yeah, I really liked it. There's a lot of aspects of this plan. It's like, oh, it's perfect that we don't get this often. And now you're like, yeah, but I mean, I guess it was pretty stupid. It's like, hello? Was this like two different videos just merged together? The alpha and the omega of Ahsoka review? What is going on?
I would not go as far to say that Thrawn was an idiot in this entire sequence.
Okay, now you're just trolling me.
Again, I think the plan was pretty clever. However, there are a few little details that make us question this plan, and there are some minor changes that could have made this plan even better.
Oh, you coward. Just say you liked the idea and concept, but it was poorly executed. That's all you have to say.
Firstly, in episode 7, Ahsoka is hiding from Thrawn in the debris. Instead of letting Ahsoka just sit there and stall her, Thrawn decides to open fire on her, thus causing her to leave her hiding spot and pursue Sabine. It's a minor thing, but it completely contradicts Thrawn's plan. When you tell us your character is a genius, they are open to this type of criticism.
I like this slip here because I don't recall, I could be wrong, I doubt it, but I don't think anyone in the show, there was never any reference to Thrawn being genius. No one actually said genius or anything like that. That was just like everyone who knew Thrawn projecting onto it that he was in this show. And again, that's why I hate it so much, because they get to hide behind like OG Thrawn, who is actually smart, and they get to use that to hide the fact that this one, they actually never established him character-wise as a genius, because he never did anything genius or just like normal. Everything he did was just stupid for some reason. So it's just like, it's so sneaky. You know, you don't really notice it, but it's like, oh yeah, that's right. The genius thing, that's just totally made up. You know, that didn't happen in this show.
One criticism that people throw around a lot is that Thrawn should have just destroyed the tower, thus giving Ahsoka and company no way to even enter the Star Destroyer. I disagree with this, and here's why. Thrawn's goal is to delay the Jedi. And yes, he is also trying to keep the Jedi in a situation where he can predict their next move. Remember, he is trying to remove all randomness. By destroying the tower, the audience knows that Ahsoka and company would likely be screwed, but Thrawn doesn't know what the Jedi have up their sleeve.
This is so pathetic. He's like trying to like come up with all these excuses about why Thrawn just didn't do the normal thing and kill his enemies like we know he would. And he's like, well, you know, that's just what they would expect. They would expect to be shot at and killed. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the unexpected thing and make it easier for them and keep them alive. And it's like, are you kidding me, dude? Why can't you just say Thrawn did not have a plan and our main characters had plot armor? It's as simple as that. That's why he didn't shoot at the tower, because it would have ended the story and our main characters would have died. That's the only reason.
For all he knows, Ezra could summon space whales again. By keeping the tower intact, Ahsoka is forced to go up the tower if she wants to make it to Thrawn. In a way, Thrawn can control the path Ahsoka takes and slow her down. I love this idea and it makes sense to me.
Oh, or he could do the ultimate delay and kill her with the Star Destroyer. That would delay her for quite a bit. It would be I'd say at least 2 hours before her force ghost would come back and start haunting him, so it would give him a decent amount of time to get away.
Now, some other little nitpicks that come to mind are, why did Thrawn wait to attach the Star Destroyer to the Eye of Sion? When Morgan and Baylan first arrive, why didn't Thrawn ask for the Eye of Sion to be attached right away? This way, when the Night Sisters were done loading all their cargo, the ship could just leave instead of needing to wait for the Eye of Sion to come.
Yeah, why was the ship not attached immediately? And then why wasn't the Night Sisters' stuff just already loaded on the Star Destroyer so they could leave right away? Are you telling me they procrastinated so much they waited all 10 years until the very last day to start loading stuff on? Really?
That's probably the biggest critique of this ending sequence, but there is one easy rewrite that you can do to make this work.
Wait, didn't you just say it was a nitpick? And now you're saying it would need a rewrite to make it work? So it's not a nitpick then. It's an actual flaw, like a legitimate flaw that messes with the show. You got to get this straight, man. This is why nitpick is like, you want to use that sparingly. You just want to say, oh, this is like something I agree with, but it's small. That's not what it means. It means that it's a valid criticism that does not have a meaningful impact on the story. That's what it means. It just doesn't mean, oh, these little small thing that can be fixed easily. That's not what a nitpick is.
Have it so that cargo is only done being loaded right as Ahsoka and Sabine are attacking. That literally solves most of the problems with this ending sequence.
Okay.
Conceptually, I love Thrawn's plan, but Filoni should have just done a few more rewrites to iron out any kinks. So the episode ends with Thrawn escaping and our characters being stuck on Peridia. A lot of people felt this ending was anticlimactic, and it makes sense why. Remember, I said that the series has a major problem with making the audience feel the right emotions in a specific situation, and this ending is full of that. I'm not the only person to point this out, but it was a big mistake to not show Thrawn attack in some way. The opening crawl of the series told us that Thrawn's return needed to be stopped at all costs. All series, our heroes are working together to stop the return of Thrawn. However, they failed. Now that they have failed, we need to see why failing to stop Thrawn was such a big deal.
Season 2, man. I keep telling you, we gotta wait. All the answers will be revealed then.
But now we'll just have to wait till season 2 to see why Thrawn is such a big threat.
Oh my god, I need to start like gambling or something. I'm too good at this. I need to like throw something on like the horse races. I don't know. My luck, maybe my luck will run out eventually, but I'm on a high streak right now.
The other aspect of this episode that was anticlimactic was how Ahsoka and Sabine reacted to the events that unfolded. Remember, all season their goal was to stop Thrawn. They failed to do so, and now they are stranded in a different galaxy. How do they react? By Ahsoka telling Sabine all is okay and that they are exactly where they needed to be. I get this is part of Ahsoka's arc, that she would be more positive and more supportive of Sabine, and action is not always what's most powerful. Sometimes it's the reaction that's so powerful.
Huh, it kind of reminds me of this other Star Wars thing where the ending did not justify the reactions. What was that? I can't, what was it called? The Lost, oh, yeah, sorry, The Last Jedi. Did the same thing. When 97% of the Resistance just fucking died, but like the 7 people that were left on the Millennium Falcon were just like, but it'll be okay. We'll be good. They'll all respawn in Rise of Skywalker, so it'll be fine. But, that movie, of course, gets unfairly criticized. That's bashed by toxic fans, so it's not fair.
If our main heroes don't seem concerned that they just failed their mission, then we shouldn't be concerned either. The last part of the episode that felt so anticlimactic was Ezra's return. Hera, since the first episode, has been talking about how much Ezra means to her.
Oh, that's right, telling instead of showing. Like bad storytelling, right?
She spent all season helping Ahsoka so she can not only stop Thrawn, but also save Ezra. How does she react when he returns? She just stands there and does nothing.
Well, what if she's just in shock because she never thought she'd see him again? She hasn't seen him in 10 years, and she thought he was dead.
Go watch YouTube compilation videos of people reacting to family members returning home from the military. They are often in tears right away, and they hug their families like they're never letting go.
Yes, often. Keyword often. It's not always the case. People don't react the same thing to everything. What? Stop. You're making me defend the show. This terrible show. Please stop. I don't want to do this. It makes me sad.
We don't watch these videos simply because someone returned from the military. We watch them because we want to see how the family members reacted. Hera has gone 10 years without seeing Ezra, and this is how she reacted. Now, there is actually one little change you can make if you want the scene to feel more dreadful. Say Ezra returns, and then Hera rushes over him to give him a hug. Afterwards, she has to ask him the tough question. If he returned, does that mean Thrawn also returned? Ezra will say yes, and then Hera can look horrified.
Well, he showed up in a stormtrooper uniform, so her first question might be, "Oh my God, are you a bad guy now? What happened?" And then he snaps her neck, and he's like, "Ha ha, got you." It's just like, and it would tie back to the beginning of the show, when the Sith people came onto the dude's ship, and tricked him. It would go full circle. It'd be cinematic dissonance or whatever it is. I don't know. This guy probably knows the correct term. But yeah, that'd be pretty fulfilling. Personally, I would make a YouTube video talking about it. That'd be pretty insane.
She loves Ezra, but she has also learned that another war is about to start. That works so much better. Endings are really important because that's the last impression you leave your audience with. A great ending can make you think you watched the best thing ever. A poor ending can make you think that what you watched was worse than it actually was. And unfortunately, while the ending of Ahsoka did have some nice moments and some wonderful music, ultimately it was anticlimactic and left a bad taste in a lot of viewers' mouths.
Okay, now I feel like this guy's just gone full fence sitter. He can't just stick with a criticism without being like, well, I appreciated this or these nice moments. Dude, just have some balls, dude. Just say, oh, this part was bad and they could have done better on it. So you don't have to just say these vague oh, I like these nice moments that I'm not going to really discuss just to make this seem lighter than it is. Just say it how it is, man. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear why it was bad, and we want to hear that it is bad and how bad it is. That's what we're looking for here. We don't need to. I don't need you to soften the blow for me. Trust me, I can take it. Dave probably can't, but it's okay. We're all big boys here.
So, that's it for all the episodes of Ahsoka. However, as I promised in the beginning of the video, I'm gonna do my own little rewrite of the series.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm done. I think when I started, I was like, yeah, I'll stick around for the rewrite, but I have no faith whatsoever after watching this that this guy would be able to produce anything better than what Dave Filoni did, and that's really saying something. It's just he doesn't understand. I'm shocked that after all this time, people still don't understand the basic issues of why Ahsoka doesn't work. And I think what shocked me the most was his explanation of Thrawn's quote-unquote plan at the end. He just didn't get it at all. And it's funny, we were talking about Thrawn cope. He was literally doing it for Thrawn. He was coping so much, it's well, this must be why he was doing this and not killing them, because it was all part of his plan. It's just dude, come on, you're doing the same thing. But anyway, so that was Goldman's response. I was really not impressed. I agreed with him on a few things at maybe the basic level, but most of that was just incoherent criticism. It's really disappointing. And that was his follow-up video. I can only imagine the Almost Great video. That's probably a catastrophe. It doesn't change for us Star Wars people. Always be misunderstood. Oh, you hate Star Wars because you're just I don't know. I'm tired, man. Just want good Star Wars. Speaking of which, I guess it's a good segue. Thank you for staying here. If you're all the way here, I'm surprised you made it this far. I probably wouldn't be able to, but I, Codex Excelsior, as I am named, really like Star Wars, just like Goldman. It's one of my great passions, and I plan to talk about it more in the future. So if you're interested in more Star Wars stuff, that'll be coming very soon. So stick around for that. And other stuff is coming as well. I plan to talk about a variety of different things, lots of media as well. I'll be focusing on. I have a few projects to round out the year, and then I got a lot that I want to do for 2025. It's not totally organized yet, but we will get there. So, yeah, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, or you like me, I hope so, please stick around for that. Oh, and please feel free to leave any criticism of myself, or comments or suggestions that you have for the way I do videos, because like I said before, I am relatively new to this. I have a good idea of how to make videos, but I'm not totally in the clear yet as far as experience, so any comments that you guys have are helpful. And particularly with this video, I wouldn't worry too much, because this is more of just me trying something out. This will not be the normal format of how I do stuff. This is just something I want to try, so any informal audio or just way of responding, yes, you can expect more professionally put together stuff in the future. So I think that's about it. I guess I'll just see you guys next time. I better get back to the dungeon of video content making. So yeah, catch you guys on the flip.
Ready?
Go!